Chapter 78. Colin's words caused Quincy to freeze on the spot. After a while, he came back to his senses and asked in disbelief, Sir Viscounts, why you mean? That's right. I'm giving you this chance to return to the position of tax official in Icestone City. Thank you so much. Your kindness and wisdom are as dazzling as the sun, as bright as the ocean. Don't be in such a hurry to thank me. Colin waved his hand and interrupted the overly excited Quincy. If you mess it up, then I'll guard the library for you for the rest of my life, Quincy said loudly. Colin rolled his eyes. He didn't expect this old man to be so crafty. At his age, who knew how many more years he had left to live? If he messed it up and came back to guard the library, it wouldn't be a loss no matter how he looked at it. Instead, it would seem like Colin was taking care of him in his old age. No, it's not just you. If you mess it up, your son, oh right, you have a son, right? Colin saw Quincy nod before continuing. Your son will also come and guard the library for the rest of his life. Quincy's expression finally changed. What? Scared? Could it be that all your bold words from before were just boasting? Colin saw this and began to provoke him. Of course not. Good, then you choose. Either you continue to guard the library for me, or you take this chance I'm giving you and take a gamble. Quincy's chest rose and fell violently. After a while, he clenched his teeth and said fiercely, Sir Viscounts, if I can really make Icestone City the most dazzling city on the northern frontier within 10 years, can you agree to a request of mine? Tell me. I hope you can bestow me with a surname. Colin's eyebrows twitched. In the Radiant Empire, only nobles were allowed to have surnames. Of course, Quincy didn't make this request to have Colin bestow him with a title, because this was not allowed. According to this world's noble laws, commoners were not allowed to be granted titles. Because they didn't have noble bloodlines, they didn't deserve it. However, it wasn't true that commoners couldn't change their social class. And the only way to make this leap was to marry a noble's daughter. As long as this noble's daughter gave birth to a descendant, then this descendant of a commoner and a noble would have a noble bloodline. Although it wouldn't be so pure, it would still be able to enter the eyes of the nobles. Thus, he would have the qualifications to accept the title of nobility. After being granted a title, the descendant could ask the lord to give him a surname. This surname could be shared with his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. This was truly bringing honor to their ancestors. And that was what Quincy's current request meant, to ask Colin to help him. He probably wouldn't be able to marry her. It should be to help Quincy's son marry a noble's daughter, so that their family could achieve a social transition. Okay, Colin nodded. Not only did he not think that a commoner like Quincy, who had not made any contributions yet, was being tactless, he felt that it was a manifestation of self-confidence. One's ability was generally proportional to one's temper. Compared to a mediocre person with a good temper, he preferred a capable person who had a temper and personality and dared to make requests. If this former tax collector could really make Icestone City the wealthiest city on the northern frontier, then Colin felt that this person had the qualifications to enter the ranks of nobles. Seeing that Colin had agreed to his request, Quincy first showed an expression of disbelief, then ecstasy. In the end, he decisively knelt in front of Colin and swore his loyalty. Colin used Judgment Blade to tap Quincy's shoulder, accepting his loyalty. Okay, the tax collector's matter is settled. Now, you should help me look for any records related to this sword. Of course, of course. Please wait a moment. Quincy still hadn't recovered from his excitement, his body trembling nonstop. For a commoner, there was nothing more glorious than entering the ranks of nobles. Even if there was no sign of it yet, Quincy seemed to have seen his family's bright future. Colin didn't have to wait long before Quincy walked out, trembling as he held a thick tome in his hands. After flipping through it for a while, Quincy said respectfully, Sir Viscounts, the records related to Judgment Blade are all here. Colin nodded and sat down to carefully flip through the book. In reality, there was no such thing as a divine weapon in this world. It was impossible to dominate the world with just a blade or a sword. Perhaps the gods had such things in their hands, but they had never entered the mortal realm. Judgment Blade was just a well-made knight's sword. forged by a famous dwarf blacksmith. It was sharp and tough, but it wasn't invincible. The arcane array carved on it would indeed greatly increase its value, but that was it. It was obviously impossible to rely on this sword to challenge those of a higher rank and kill everyone. If it really had such power, the Duke of St. Hilda wouldn't have casually given it to Colin. What truly made this sword famous was still to see who wielded it, and what great things it had done. According to the records, this sword was originally the sword of Duke St. Theon. The most amazing thing that Duke St. Theon had done in his life was to kill the Emperor of the Radiant Empire with his own hands. And the weapon he used at that time was the Judgment Blade. This matter had a great impact at the time, almost causing the Radiant Empire to fall apart. After the Kingslayer Duke St. Theon killed the Emperor, he became the target of public criticism and was spurned by all humans. The entire human empire was in a state of panic, and the lords all raised their troops, preparing to suppress this Kingslayer. But then something happened that changed this Kingslayer into a judge. Not long after the Kingslayer incident, the Pope of the Radiant Church declared Duke St. Theon innocent in front of everyone and announced an oracle. Those who have darkness in their hearts will be judged. Thinking back to the situation at the time, this oracle clearly said that the Emperor had darkness in his heart, and Duke St. Theon was judging him. This oracle had saved Duke St. Theon. Even the Radiant God had given an oracle, so naturally, no one dared to continue condemning Duke St. Theon. All the curses immediately shifted to the Emperor who had been killed. Because of the words, "those who have darkness in their hearts" in the oracle, the poor Emperor was called the Dark Emperor. The public opinion changed instantly, and the Dark Emperor became the most foolish and evil monarch in the history of the empire, while the judge Duke St. Theon became the hero of the empire, and the limelight was unparalleled. So the knight sword he used to kill the Dark Emperor was called the Judgment Blade. After Colin finished reading this part of history, he had even more doubts in his heart. Why did Marquis Garcia want him to know these things? Was he hinting something to Colin? The former Duke St. Theon used this sword to kill his own monarch. Could it be that Marquis Garcia also wanted Colin to use it to kill his own monarch, the Duke St. Hilda? It can't be that straightforward. Colin suddenly remembered that when Marquis Garcia asked him to understand the history of this sword, he was discussing the topic of loyalty. So the message that Marquis Garcia wanted to convey should have something to do with loyalty. What was loyalty? Was Duke St. Theon's king-killing considered loyalty? If it was betrayal, then why was he pardoned by the Radiant God? Colin thought for a while, then suddenly asked Quincy, who was beside him, "Go and find the detailed records of the Dark Emperor's life for me to see." Dark Emperor? Quincy thought for a while, then shook his head. "I'm sorry, Lord Viscounts, there are no records of this Emperor's life here." "No." Colin looked up in surprise. The confusion in his heart deepened. How could there be no records? Chapter 79. The Dark Emperor did not leave behind any records. This was a very strange thing. As the former ruler of the Empire of Light, he should have been recorded in history. Moreover, this emperor was so special. He was killed by his own vassal, and even attracted the oracle of the God of Light. This kind of person should have left a strong mark in history. Even if he was notorious, he should have left something behind. So, what evil things did the Dark Emperor do that he did not leave behind any records? Colin suddenly asked. Quincy shook his head and lowered his voice, as if he was afraid of something. "Lord Viscounts, the truth about that part of history has always been shrouded in a fog. What did the Dark Emperor do? Why did the Duke of St. Theon kill him? Why did this matter attract the oracle? These things are not recorded in detail. In all the history books I have seen, the descriptions of these two people are very simple and vague, as if deliberately hiding something." Colin nodded in agreement. He felt that there were too many suspicious points in this part of history. Then, why did Marquis Garcia suggest that he understand this part of history? After thinking for a while, Colin suddenly asked, "Right, the history of the House of St. Theon should be here, right?" "Yes." Quincy ran to the bookshelf and took out a book. "Lord Viscounts, please take a look." Colin flipped through it again. Actually, Colin had some understanding of the House of St. Theon. After all, this was a paladin family, definitely a great noble. Other than the imperial family, There were only 6 such families in the entire human empire. Of course, only 4 of the 6 paladin families could be passed down to the present day. The other 2 disappeared. The House of St. Thean was one of them. Thinking about it carefully, this was actually a very unreasonable thing. Because according to the unspoken rules of the nobles in this world, it was very rare for a family to be destroyed. Just like when the Duke of St. Hilda executed the rebellious lords, he also spared their families. Therefore, these families only lost their titles and territories, but the family did not disappear because of this. They were still considered nobles. No matter how destitute they were, they still had surnames, and were fundamentally different from commoners. Once they achieved enough military merits, they could immediately receive rewards and rise again. Therefore, very few noble surnames were lost, especially for a noble surname like St. Thean, which had the word St in it. It was strange that it disappeared in the long river of history. After skimming through the history of the St. Thean family, Colin was still puzzled. According to the book, the fief of the House of St. Thean was in the east of the empire. However, at that time, the eastern region of the empire was not as monolithic as it was now. Instead, it was divided into 2 territories, one in the south and one in the north. The southern part of the eastern region was the territory of the House of St. Prospero, while the northern part was the territory of the House of St. Thean. The territories of these 2 families were close to each other. Of course, there was no lack of conflict and friction. There were even several large-scale wars. However, what was interesting was that in the end, the crucial war that caused the House of St. Thean to lose the northern part of the eastern region was fought with the House of St. Hilda on the northern frontier. In the war that took place more than 300 years ago, the Dukes of the North led the army to defeat the main army of the House of St. Thean, and even killed the judge, Duke St. Thean. In this war, the Blade of Judgment became the trophy of the House of St. Hilda. However, the real winner of that war was the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, the St. Pros family. They took advantage of the defeat of the House of St. Thean and the heavy losses of the army of the north, and invaded the northern part of the eastern region. In the end, they completely destroyed the remaining army of the House of St. Thean, and became the only master of the eastern region. However, that was the strange thing. In this war, although the House of St. Thean lost its territory and its army, the family members did not suffer too many losses. Whether it was the House of St. Hilda or the House of St. Prospero, after killing the judge, Duke St. Thean, they would not break the unspoken rules of the aristocracy and kill the House of St. Thean. However, the nightmare of the House of St. Thean began. Without the protection of the castle and the army, the members of the House of St. Thean were repeatedly assassinated, and the killers could not be found. This incident even alarmed the imperial family of the empire. The San Lorenzo family took the initiative to mediate and severely reprimanded the Duke of St. Hilda and the Duke of St. Prospero, asking them to maintain the demeanor of the winners and forgive the losers. At the same time, His Majesty at that time also took the surviving members of the House of St. Thean into the palace for strict protection. However, this still did not stop the members of the House of St. Thean from dying one by one for various strange reasons. Later, even the Church of Light was enraged by this act of breaking the rules. His Holiness the Pope personally stood up and declared that a noble bloodline like the House of St. Thean would not be allowed to die out. 2 cardinals even went to the northern frontier and the eastern region in person, sternly asking the Duke of St. Hilda and the Duke of St. Prospero to stop this act of breaking the rules. Of course, the 2 dukes kept protesting. In order to clear their names, they even announced the whereabouts of every knight under their command, and allowed the church personnel to monitor and search their territories at will. Under the gaze of all kinds of people, the 2 biggest enemies of the House of St. Thean seemed to be closely watched and had no chance to act. Even so, it still could not stop the members of the House of St. Thean from dying one by one, who was behind the scenes and insisted on killing the House of St. Thean. As for this strange incident, the history books did not give an answer. In the end, this once illustrious paladin family disappeared from the empire without a trace. It was not known whether the family had really been completely cut off, or if they had quietly hidden away. After reading this part of history, Colin's doubts did not lessen. Instead, they increased. In his opinion, the history of the Judgment Blade must have hidden the most important information. And this information might be the real hint that Marquis Garcia had given him. However, this clue could not be found in the history books. This was not strange. The things that were written down were usually what the superiors wanted their descendants to see. The real key was something that only a few people knew. The bloody, dirty, and ugly things that were covered by the fog of history were often the truth of the matter. Closing the book, Colin suddenly turned to Quincy and asked, "What do you think of the demise of the House of St. Thean?" Quincy hesitated for a moment and carefully chose his words. "Lord Viscounts, I think they deserved it." "Oh, why?" "No matter how they cover it up, Duke St. Thean's killing of the Dark Emperor is an unforgivable betrayal." Colin did not expect Quincy to see this matter this way. However, after thinking about it carefully, Colin suddenly felt that this old man seemed to be referring to something else. Unforgivable? To whom was the most unforgivable act of regicide? Of course, it was the Empire's royal family, the San Lorenzo family. Duke St. Thean's regicide, regardless of the reason, was an unforgivable betrayal to the San Lorenzo family. It severely damaged the prestige of the Empire's royal family. No wonder the House of St. Thean was assassinated after escaping into the palace. So this was the situation. The House of St. Hilda and the House of St. Prospero were probably just hired thugs on the surface. The one who really wanted to end the House of St. Thean was probably the Empire's royal family. Chapter 80. A reindeer suddenly darted out of the lush forest. It ran very quickly, as if it was hiding from an enemy. Whoosh! A sharp arrow pierced through the layers of leaves and accurately pierced through the reindeer's body. Footsteps sounded, and 3 hunters appeared beside the reindeer's corpse. "Sir Rigo, your archery skills are too exquisite. You hit every shot." An attendant carried the reindeer's corpse on his shoulder and praised loudly. The Knight of Rigo curled his lips. "It's just a reindeer. What's there to be surprised about? Hurry up and help me find where there are wild boars in this forest. Today I want to treat Sir Viscounts to roast pig trotters." Yes. The 3 continued to walk forward. Suddenly, the Knight of Rigo stopped, because a figure suddenly appeared in front of them. The person was tall and thin, wearing a half-body chainmail with a long sword at his waist. He wore a tight helmet that hid his face. The Knight of Rigo frowned, feeling that this person's appearance was a bit strange. He cautiously asked, "I am a knight under Viscount Angley of Icestone City Rigo Morben. May I ask who you are?" The strange person in front of them didn't answer Rigo's question. Seeing this, one of the attendants instantly became angry. "Hey, rude brat, which mercenary group are you from? Why aren't you answering Sir Rigo's question?" The other side was still silent. The attendant became even angrier and immediately strode forward, trying to take off the strange person's helmet. Rigo didn't stop him, but instead reached for the knight's sword at his waist. "Hey, do you understand what I'm saying or not?" Amidst the screams, the attendant stepped into the trap, and his right foot was instantly pierced until it was a bloody mess. Clang! Rigo immediately pulled out his sword and said angrily, "Brat, this is the last warning. Take off your helmet, throw down your sword, and tell us your identity. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." However, the strange person was still unmoved by Rigo's warning. Rigo didn't speak anymore. He held his breath and focused, holding his sword with both hands as he slowly approached the strange person. But before he could reach the strange man, he heard a scream behind him. Leg abruptly turned around and saw that the other attendant following him had also been ambushed. "Bastard!" Leg roared angrily and was about to go back to save the servant. At this moment, the tall and skinny freak suddenly moved. "I've been waiting for you." Leg didn't panic at all. It was as if he had been prepared for this. He turned around and slashed at his opponent. Clang! The 2 swords clashed. Leg was shocked. "You're a knight." The tall and skinny freak didn't answer. He swung his sword again. The uneasiness in Leg's heart grew stronger. an unfamiliar knight that had suddenly appeared in the outskirts of Icestone City, and a third-rank one at that. This obviously alerted Leg. Could it be that there were other lords targeting the Angeli family? Leg immediately recalled that the mastermind behind the assassination of the Viscounts in the Kingdom of Grey Castle had not been caught yet. Could it be? Boom. Leg swung his sword heavily, forcing the mysterious knight to retreat. Then he did not chase after him. Instead, he turned and ran. The other party had planned this beforehand. This was probably a trap. The Viscounts must be in danger as well. Leg didn't dare to stop. He didn't even care about the two attendants behind him. He broke into a run and ran in the direction of Colin. That mysterious knight also chased after him. With one running and one chasing, the two ran quite a distance. Just as the mysterious knight chased after Leg's footsteps and jumped over a small stream, Leg suddenly stopped in his tracks. Then, he abruptly turned around and swung his sword just as the knight landed on the ground. The mysterious knight didn't dodge and was stabbed in the stomach by Leg's sword. Haha, you didn't expect this, did you? A sly smile appeared on Leg's fierce face. However, this smile quickly froze, because the other party actually didn't care about the long sword in his stomach and swung his sword again. This reckless action caught Leg off guard. In order to prevent his forearm from being cut off, he could only let go of his sword. Which family's knight are you? Are you crazy? Seeing the mysterious knight with the sword in his stomach and still chasing after him, as if nothing had happened, Leg felt that this world was too crazy. Now that he didn't have a weapon, he didn't dare to look back and could only continue running forward. Whoosh! A sharp arrow shot over, but Leg narrowly dodged it. Not good, this guy has a helper. Leg was scared out of his wits. He realized that he was going to die today. Then, a few more arrows shot out from the forest, causing Leg to be tired of dodging. Soon, the mysterious knight behind him caught up. Gee! Leg screamed in pain. His thigh was cut by the other party. Wait, who are you? At least let me know who killed me? Leg fell to the ground and panted. Unfortunately, the other party didn't care about Leg. Pung! The mysterious knight swung his scabbard and heavily smashed the back of Leg's head. Leg screamed in pain again. Are you trying to knock me out? Can you use more strength? Pung! Another hit. This time Leg finally fainted. Leg, wake up. Leg opened his eyes in a daze and saw Colin's face. Sir Viscounts. Leg's consciousness didn't seem to be fully awake. After a while, he finally woke up and hurriedly asked, Sir Viscounts, are you okay? I was attacked by a mysterious knight just now, and almost couldn't see you again. Colin held back his laughter and comforted him. I'm fine. Luckily, I heard your screams and brought people over in time. The knight who attacked you must have heard our movements and ran away. Ran away? Leg had a look of pity. He felt that he couldn't take revenge. Are you okay? You look so pale. Colin asked with concern. I'm fine. My leg is a little injured. It's not a big deal. However, I'm a little dizzy. I probably lost too much blood. Then you should quickly stop the bleeding. Colin waved at a servant behind him, indicating for him to bandage Leg's wound. Sir Viscounts, that mysterious knight is probably a woman. Leg suddenly said. Oh, you saw her face? Colin asked expressionlessly. I didn't. However, Leg rubbed his big bald head. He seemed to have touched the injured area and grimaced in pain. However, when she tried to knock me out, she didn't succeed. With such little strength, she should be a woman. The corner of Colin's mouth twitched. He was a little speechless. Is that so? Then this is indeed a useful clue. Yes. Also, Sir Viscounts, I suspect that this person might be related to the mastermind who tried to assassinate you in Grey Castle. Yes. How about this? It's not safe here. Let's return to Icestone City first. You'll be in charge of investigating this matter. All right. Leg gritted his teeth. I must catch that damned female knight. And then smash her head. Chapter 81. The night deepened. There was no moonlight in Icestone City tonight, only a few stars. Colin stood on the balcony of the Red Castle and looked into the distance. To the north was the cold and barren sky ice field, and to the east, he could see the edge of the forest. Who knew how many wild beasts were hidden in the dark forest? After passing through the dark forest, he would enter the territory of the half-elf kingdom. Footsteps sounded, and Knight Charles appeared behind Colin. "Sir, you were looking for me? Have a seat." Colin turned around and pointed at the glass of red wine on the table. "Have a drink." Knight Charles was a bit hesitant. "Sir, I've already prepared to stop drinking." "It's fine, just drink less," Colin insisted. Only then did Knight Charles raise the wine glass and lightly touch it with Colin before sending it to his mouth. Colin drank the red wine while paying attention to Knight Charles's reaction. The red wine he gave Charles had poison in it. Of course, this wasn't Colin purposely tricking his blood descendant. It was just that he was doing an experiment, and he had already experimented on blood thralls before and found that they were all immune to poison. Therefore, he felt that higher-level blood descendants should also be immune to poison. "How is it? Are there any changes in your body these past few days?" Colin put down the wine glass and asked. Charles put down the wine glass and excitedly reported his findings to Colin. Through the other's description, Colin learned that Knight Charles's current changes were very similar to his. Photophobia, bloodthirsty immortality. Yes, after Charles discovered that his severed fingers had grown back, he began experimenting on his own body. Then, he discovered that there were no longer any fatal wounds on his body. Of course, unlike the blood thralls, Charles could still feel pain. Colin rubbed his chin and fell into deep thought. Right now, he really wanted to know if a blood descendant could also level up by drinking the blood of a high-level knight. However, Charles was already a third-level knight, and Colin didn't have the blood of a fourth-level knight to experiment on. "Can you control your canine teeth?" Colin asked again. "Tiger Fong?" Puzzled, Knight Charles opened his mouth, revealing 2 inconspicuous canine teeth. "I don't think so." Colin guessed that if a bloodline couldn't control the lengthening of its canine teeth, then it probably wouldn't be able to release blood poison through its canine teeth and create blood thralls. Of course, it would be even more impossible to complete the embrace and create the next generation of blood descendants. After that, Colin chatted with Knight Siar about some matters related to the construction of the cavalry. Seeing that Siar's expression remained the same, completely unaffected by the poisonous wine, Colin confirmed the fact that the blood descendants were immune to poison. "Oh, by the way, do you like hunting?" Colin suddenly asked. Knight Charles froze for a moment and nodded. "I like it. Well, the last time I went hunting with Knight Leg, this guy met a mysterious knight and was beaten up. He didn't have enough fun. I was going to go with him again, but I've been too busy recently. If you have time, accompany him to have some fun." After borrowing blood from Rigo last time, Colin had successfully advanced to the 2nd level. However, he felt that Rigo's blood should be able to help him advance to the 3rd level, so he wanted to borrow it again. However, Colin didn't plan to bring Rigo out to hunt again. That would easily arouse the other party's suspicion. If he was attacked every time he went hunting with Colin, then no matter how stupid he was, Rigo would suspect that the attacker was related to Colin. Therefore, he planned to let Knight Charles lure the Knight of Rigo out. Okay. Knight Charles didn't suspect anything and naturally nodded in agreement. After sending Knight Charles off, Colin picked up the other party's wine cup and poured the remaining poisonous wine into his mouth. If blood thralls and blood descendants were immune to poison, then he shouldn't have any problems either. Colin thought so. Just as he was carefully feeling the changes in his body, footsteps sounded again. Butler Eamon appeared on the balcony. "Master, you were looking for me?" Colin nodded. "Have a seat." The two sat down on the balcony. Colin clapped his hands and had the maid bring in 2 more cups of red wine and some dried fruit. Of course, there was no poison in the wine this time. The maid quietly placed the things on the table and then quickly left. "You changed all the servants in the castle?" Colin took a sip of red wine and asked. "No, I just changed your personal servants. This is also for your safety, and it didn't cost much," Eamon hurriedly explained. Colin nodded and didn't say anything. The servants in the Red Castle were mostly left behind by the Su Duo family. Colin originally didn't plan to change all of them. After all, the recruitment and training of new servants required money, and the Angeli family's current financial situation wasn't that great. He needed to save as much money as possible and use it in crucial areas, such as the construction of the army. However, he also knew that the old butler had good intentions, so he didn't reprimand him. "How is the new tax officer Quincy doing?" "Very good." Eamon smiled and nodded. "Master, you found a very outstanding tax officer." That's good. However, you have to keep an eye on him. I can't completely trust him yet." "I understand." Seeing that Eamon understood his intentions, Colin was relieved. He took out a letter from his shirt pocket and handed it to the old butler. "I just received a reply from Marquis Dawson. He agreed to provide us with war horses and armor. However, the price is a little too high. See if it's suitable." Eamon carefully read Marquis Dawson's reply and thought for a moment before saying, "Master, we can get Marquis Dawson to provide a batch of samples. If the quality of the samples is as he said, and isn't inferior to the standard equipment of the Black Cavalry, then the price isn't too high. All right, then let him send over a batch of samples first." Colin rubbed his forehead and was somewhat vexed. "But with our family's finances, can we afford this expenditure? It's very difficult," Eamon said truthfully. Seeing that Colin was deep in thought, Eamon advised, "Master, forgive me for being blunt, but isn't it a little too hasty to form a cavalry now?" Colin was silent. He understood that Eamon's words made sense. He was indeed a little hasty. If he waited for a year or two, for the territory to recover and for the taxes to be plentiful, it might be more appropriate to form a cavalry. However, Colin couldn't wait that long. He knew that the Duke of St. Hilda and Marquis Garcia had already formed a rift. Although Marquis Garcia didn't seem to have made any moves, as though he had endured his brother's betrayal. However, who knew when a crisis would appear on the northern frontier? At that time, would the Black Cavalry still stand unreservedly on the side of the Duke of St. Hilda, just like the previous 2 times? Thus Colin felt a deep sense of danger. He had to quickly develop his own forces. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have the right to choose a side, and could only go with the flow and be trampled on. Thinking of this, Colin clenched his teeth and said fiercely, "We can borrow money." Chapter 82. Loan. Yes. Use the territory's future taxes as collateral to borrow from merchants. As long as the interest is reasonable, I believe that many large merchant guilds will be willing to help us. The old butler's eyebrows furrowed deeply, somewhat hesitant about Colin's decision. In the knowledge of the people of this world, borrowing money was not something to be proud of. Especially for a noble, this was practically announcing to everyone, "I am in need of money." For nobles who valued reputation, this was a very disgraceful thing to do. Unless they were at a critical juncture, where they were about to go bankrupt, no noble lord would borrow money from others. "Master, I'm afraid this will affect the Angeli family's reputation," the old butler advised with a face full of worry. "Reputation is false." Colin waved his hand, looking as if he didn't care. For a transmigrator like him, borrowing money to develop himself was a matter of course. In fact, those nobles who would rather die than borrow money were the real fools in Colin's eyes. Using other people's money to develop one's own strength was a very smart thing to do. Even if the worst happened, and the loan couldn't be repaid, as long as the Angeli family's army developed smoothly, would they still be afraid of people coming to ask them to repay the debt? "All right, I've made my decision. Release the news tomorrow. We will organize a gathering and invite some powerful merchant guilds to discuss the details of the loan." "Yes, master." Seeing that Colin had made up his mind, Eamon didn't dare to say anything more. The next day, when the news that Viscount Angley was preparing to borrow money was released, a group of merchants swarmed to Icestone City like sharks that smelled blood. Just as these merchants were rubbing their hands and preparing to snatch this deal, a merchant came to the Red Fort first and requested to see Viscount Angley. Originally, Colin didn't plan to meet any merchant alone. In his opinion, only by gathering these merchants together and letting them compete would he be able to get the best loan terms. However, when the servant told him that the visitor was Oliver from the Tulip Merchant Guild, Colin still agreed to the other party's request. After all, he was an old acquaintance. Although Oliver had offended Colin, his apology was very sincere. In Colin's opinion, this was a person who knew his limits and knew how to do things. Esteemed Viscounts, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to meet me. I feel extremely honored. The fat merchant still had that flattering smile on his face. When he saw Colin, he immediately bowed 90 degrees, his attitude extremely respectful. All right, Oliver, there's no need to be so courteous with me. I also know what you want. Tell me about your Tulip Chamber of Commerce's conditions. If they are suitable, I don't mind borrowing from you on account of our old acquaintance. Oliver chuckled and said, Sir Viscounts, please be at ease. Based on our past friendship, our Tulip Chamber of Commerce will definitely give you the best loan terms. But before that, please allow me to give you a gift. It's a celebration for you being made a Viscount. Gift. Colin suddenly smiled playfully. He remembered that last time, the fat merchant had given him a set of armor as a gift in exchange for his forgiveness. Then, what was the purpose of this gift? There was one thing that Colin was sure of, and that was that Oliver's gift was definitely not a celebration of his promotion to Viscount as he had said. This was simply a bribe. What gift? Colin sneered in his heart. If Oliver thought that a small gift would make him give the Tulip Chamber of Commerce this big loan order, then he was underestimating him too much. Oliver waved his hand behind him. Two servants carried a large box and walked up to him. When the box was opened, a soul-stirring frosty aura assaulted his senses. It turned out to be a set of enchanted armor. Moreover, it was the set that Colin had once asked for the price, but could not afford. If I remember correctly, the price of this set of enchanted armor is 50,000 gold coins, right? Yes, Sir Viscounts. Are you sure you want to give it to me like this? Let me make it clear first. Even if I accept this set of armor, I will not necessarily take care of the Tulip Chamber of Commerce when it comes to the loan. Of course, Sir Viscounts. This set of armor is just to celebrate your promotion as Viscounts. There is no other meaning, and it has nothing to do with the loan. Colin was suddenly puzzled. There was no free lunch in the world. He had always believed in this saying. Oliver had given him such a big gift. How could it be that he did not ask for anything in return? It must be known that 50,000 gold coins was by no means a small amount. When the Angeli family was still a baron, the entire barony's annual tax income was only 3,000 gold coins. Even if he was now a Viscount and his territory had expanded several times, Colin estimated that the annual income of the entire Viscounts would not exceed 30,000 gold coins. Just tell me, who sent this gift? Colin did not believe that Oliver, a steward of the Chamber of Commerce, had the authority to decide this matter. Thinking of the person behind the Tulip Chamber of Commerce, Colin suddenly realized something. Oliver's smile disappeared and his tone became solemn. Sir Viscounts, to tell you the truth, this gift was personally decided by our Chamber of Commerce's president. Who is your president? Hearing this question, Oliver did not immediately answer. Instead, he looked around with a mysterious expression. Colin waved his hand and ordered the surrounding attendants. All of you are dismissed. When only Colin and Oliver were left in the hall, the fat merchant spoke again. Sir Viscounts, our Tulip Chamber of Commerce's president is Madame Penny. Madame Penny? Colin thought for a while before finally finding the corresponding name in his memory. Wasn't this the mother of Colin's brother-in-law whose whereabouts were still unknown? She was also the lover of Count Allman. Colin suddenly became vigilant. Why did Madame Penny give me such a big gift? Oliver bowed his head. This is Madame Penny's apology to you. What do you mean? Colin narrowed his eyes. Knight Vala has successfully returned to Fallen Eagle City. However, he had followed your father into battle and was unable to protect the Baron. Therefore, Madame Penny is expressing her most sincere apology to you on behalf of her son. Hearing that his brother-in-law who had disappeared for a long time had suddenly appeared in Fallen Eagle City, Colin's eyes began to flicker with a dangerous light. He tried his best to control his anger and asked calmly, Is Knight Vala well? Where did he go before? Everything is well with the knight. He was captured by the trolls in the previous battle. Later, when the Black Cavalry caught up with the troll army, he was thrown into the ice field with the other human captives by the trolls. Fortunately, the Radiant Lord protected him, and after going through untold hardships, he returned to the northern frontier. Chapter 83. Captured by trolls? And then escaped. Of course, Colin didn't believe a single word of this. In his opinion, after her father died in battle, Vala had probably escaped alone and brought back the news of the Baron's death. This had aroused Count Oman's greed, and he wanted to kill Colin and seize the Angeli family's title. Now, Penny had suddenly sent such a huge gift to Colin through the Tulip Merchant Guild. What was the meaning of this? Was it a deliberate provocation? Or was it because she saw that Colin had succeeded in inheriting the title and was highly valued by the Duke of St. Hilda, and felt that she could no longer do anything? So she began to express goodwill? Does Count Aldman know about this? No. Colin shook his head inwardly, feeling that Count Oman probably did not know that his lover had sent Colin such a huge gift. Because in Colin's opinion, such a move was too unwise. After all, Colin only suspected that the Oman family had tried to assassinate him, and did not have any evidence. He had not told anyone else. Thus, Lady Penny's actions made her seem guilty. As for congratulating Colin for being promoted to viscounts, or apologizing for his father's death in battle, these were all excuses. 50,000 gold coins. This was definitely not a small sum. Was there a need to spend so much money to congratulate or apologize? With Count Oman's shrewdness and insidiousness, Colin felt that this count would definitely not do such a thing. Colin sneered inwardly. Although he had never met Count Oman's lover, he had already labeled her as a brainless pretty woman in his heart. Ah, Lady Penny is so considerate. In that case, I'll accept it. Colin revealed a sorrowful expression, but this sorrow did not last long, and was immediately replaced by a Philistine. But can the armor be exchanged for gold coins? Oliver was prepared to say some polite words, but now he suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. Isn't this enchanted armor worth 50,000 gold coins? Colin asked with a natural expression. Yes. Then I don't want the armor. Just give me 50,000 gold coins. Oliver hesitated for a long time. When he saw that Colin was serious and did not seem to be joking, he nodded with a constipated look. If you insist, I can help you change it into gold coins. Only then did Colin smile and clap his hands. Okay, please thank Madame Penny for me. Although it was very impolite and undignified to exchange a gift from someone else for gold coins, especially in front of them. But Colin didn't care. The expensive cost of building a cavalry unit made him want to sell himself. Now that there was such a rare gift from this foolish woman, of course, he would not let it go so easily. Moreover, with his blood breed's undying characteristic, the enchanted armor was of no use at all. At most, it would only look cool. How could it be more practical than gold? Okay, I will certainly convey it for you. Oliver was speechless at this viscounts who did not play by the rules. But he still took a deep breath and asked, Sir Viscounts, regarding the loan, would you be willing to listen to the conditions of our Tulip Chamber of Commerce? Let's hear it. Having just received a huge sum of 50,000 gold coins, Colin was in a good mood. If the Tulip Chamber of Commerce's loan conditions were reasonable, he was prepared to sign a contract with them for the sake of this big gift. Oliver cleared his throat and solemnly said, Sir Viscounts, our Tulip Chamber of Commerce can provide you with a loan of up to 300,000 gold coins. The annual interest rate is 8%, and the term is 10 years. The collateral is the tax revenue of the Viscounts for the next 10 years. Colin had previously asked Eamon about the details of this world's loans. Now that he heard the Tulip Chamber of Commerce's conditions, he immediately knew that the other party's request was not excessive. In fact, the quota of 300,000 gold coins had already exceeded Colin's previous expectations. With such a huge sum of money, he could even equip a cavalry army of 1,000 people. Good. Mr. Oliver, you can go back and prepare the loan documents. I can sign them at any time. Yes, Sir Viscounts. Happy cooperation. We will definitely have a very happy cooperation. Colin strode towards Oliver and affectionately shook hands with him. His smile was sincere. After nightfall, the forest on the outskirts of Icestone City became even more dangerous. Many wild beasts would begin their own hunts under the cover of the night. Therefore, Fire became the best weapon for humans to defend themselves in the forest. Beside the blazing bonfire, the Knight of Rigo and the Knight of Seal were eating barbecued meat and laughing loudly. There were also a dozen or so accompanying guards around them. The hunt this time went very smoothly, and they did not encounter any strange people. The Knight of Rigo was very satisfied. After eating and drinking his fill, and chatting about all sorts of things, the Knight of Rigo bid farewell to the Knight of Seal, and went into his own tent, preparing to rest. The bonfire was not extinguished, and there were 2 guards left in the camp to keep watch. The night grew darker, and the moon shyly hid behind the clouds, making the forest even darker. "Is there any movement?" One of the guards on duty suddenly asked his companion. His companion, who was about to fall asleep, forced himself to open his sleepy eyes and asked in surprise, "What's wrong?" "I think I heard some movement over there. It's probably some stray cat that smelled the scent of food residue. I'll go take a look." One of them left the bonfire and walked towards the direction of the sound. His companion behind him rubbed his eyes and stretched. Then, when he turned around, he found that the guard who went to check on the situation had disappeared. He was so scared that he quivered. Just as he was about to scream, he found that his mouth was covered from behind. Bang! The back of the head was hit hard, and the guard fell to the ground. A tall and thin figure wearing a steel mask appeared behind the guard. She went straight to the Knight of Rigo's tent and went in. The Knight of Rigo, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly felt some movement beside him. He sat up alertly, but found that there was no one in front of him. Just as he heaved a sigh of relief and was about to go back to sleep, there was a sudden sound behind his head. Bang! The Knight of Rigo immediately fainted. "Knight of Rigo, Knight of Rigo?" The Knight of Rigo opened his eyes in a daze and saw the anxious eyes of the Knight of Seal. He immediately sat up and shouted, "Damn it! Someone broke into the camp last night." Yes, the 2 guards were also knocked out. "Knight of Rigo, are you okay?" Ouch! He felt a dull pain at the back of his head. Could it be that guy from last time? The mysterious knight from last time? Seal had also heard about what happened to Rigo the last time. He was sympathetic but also confused. "Why does she keep looking for you?" "How would I know?" Rigo mumbled unhappily. At this moment he saw that his wrist was bandaged and asked doubtfully, "What happened to my hand?" "Oh, when we came in, we found that your hand was cut, so we bandaged it for you." The Knight of Rigo shook his wrist and felt that it was not a big deal, so he did not take it to heart. He stood up and suddenly felt dizzy. He roared gloomily, "Return to the city immediately. Let's go back to the city immediately. This time, I'll bring the army to search. I don't believe that we can't find that damned female knight." Chapter 84. Outside Ice Stone City, the sound of horse hooves rumbled. The sound of bowstrings rang out continuously, accompanied by the scolding of the officers. "Posture, posture. Don't just focus on aiming. Pay attention to maintaining your posture on the horse." "Tom, I'm talking about you, damn it. Is your waist broken?" "And you, Jerry. Looks good, they're starting to look good." Colin watched the scene of his first batch of cavalry training from afar, and was in a good mood. "They're only starting to look good. They're still far from it." The Knight of Charles was clearly still dissatisfied. Colin laughed. "They're new recruits after all. You can't use the Black Cavalry standards to judge them. I'm already very satisfied that they've become like this in just a month. You guys did well." "You flatter us. This is mainly due to your support." The Knight of Charles's words weren't completely flattery. Colin's support for this cavalry was indeed unreserved, giving them people, money, and equipment. He spent the huge sum of money he had just borrowed like flowing water, as if he had no concept of saving. Steward Eamon watched with trepidation, occasionally trying to persuade him. But Colin still did things his way. In his opinion, only the money that was spent could have real value. And just as a famous entrepreneur once said, the money wasn't really spent, it was just used to stay by your side in another way. In the past, Colin had scoffed at this saying, but now, looking at this batch of cavalry flying past in front of him, he deeply agreed. "Is there a problem with the source of soldiers? I see that you've only recruited about 300 people." After Colin received the huge loan, He increased the size of the cavalry from 100 to 1,000. Sir Viscounts, the first batch of recruits shouldn't be too large. The training effect will greatly decrease if there are too many people. Alright, as long as you know what to do. Colin didn't interfere too much with the training of the Knight of Charles. He knew that professional matters should be left to professionals. He really didn't know anything about cavalry training. However, Knight Charles, who was from the Black Cavalry, was an expert in this field. A few days ago, the Knight of Rigo told me that you stole many of his high-quality recruits. Just as Knight Charles was about to explain, Colin waved his hand and continued. Don't be nervous. I'm not blaming you. I've already made it clear that the cavalry has priority when it comes to recruiting new soldiers. I'm just wondering why you didn't pick on Leg's veterans, but went to snatch the recruits from him. Lord Viscounts, although the soldiers under the Knight of Rigo are indeed very good, strong, and highly trained, they are still infantry after all. They are used to fighting on foot, and many of their tactical movements have already been formed. They are not particularly suitable to be cavalry. What about the recruits? What kind of recruit is worth fighting over with Leg? A captive who escaped from the Sky Ice Field? Captive? Yes, a batch of captives that the trolls took away when they invaded the northern frontier a few months ago. Later, when Marquis Garcia led his army to catch up with the trolls, these 50,000 captives were abandoned on the ice field by the trolls. During this period of time, many captives have successfully returned alive. Colin finally understood why these escaped captives were fought over by both Leg and Charles at the same time. Because these people were the true warriors who had been through layers and layers of harsh selection. First, the trolls did the first round of selection. When they took captives, they definitely didn't choose the old, weak, or sick, but the young and strong. This way they could be used as labor. The second round of selection began when these captives were abandoned on the ice field by the trolls. This was an even more cruel and severe round of selection. This didn't only require a strong body, but also a certain amount of intelligence and courage to be able to survive in the harsh cold and hunger. After all, when the trolls abandoned them, they didn't leave any food for them. Therefore, the only way for these captives to obtain food was through hunting. However, there weren't many wild animals on the ice field. If these 50,000 people gathered together, then even if they caught all the animals in the sky and on the ground, it wouldn't be enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Therefore, the smart ones had to make a choice at this time. Following the main group seemed safe, but in reality, it was just waiting for death. Only by forming small groups and staying away from the main group could they obtain enough food to fill their stomachs through hunting. In reality, from the looks of the captive groups that had arrived in Icestone City these days, they were all small groups of less than 100 people. Those with more people would probably have starved to death on the ice field long ago. Those with fewer people would be in danger when they encountered ferocious wild beasts. Therefore, these captives who had successfully escaped from the ice field naturally became delicious cakes in the eyes of Charles and Leg. This was especially true for the core members of each small team. They were the seeds of elite soldiers who possessed excellent decision-making ability and excellent organizational skills. Therefore, when the Knight of Rigo relied on Colin's promise to recruit these captives into the cavalry group, the Knight of Rigo couldn't help but complain to Colin. It couldn't be helped. This large knight was just too greedy. But no matter how greedy he was, Colin wouldn't change his strategy. Cavalry was always the military branch that he was determined to develop first. In this era of cold weapons, the deterrence of a strong cavalry group was too terrifying. Especially in places like the northern frontier and the Sky Ice Field, which were mostly plains. Unless the infantry hid in the city and didn't come out, the cavalry would always be the ruler of the battlefield. After inspecting the cavalry's training, Colin also ran to the infantry's training field to take a look. After all, he couldn't be too biased. After receiving a huge loan, Colin had increased the size of the infantry from the original 1,000 to 3,000. Currently, this number wasn't full yet. Only about half of them had been recruited. According to the Mobin brothers' estimates, they should be full in a month. Then, after 3 months of training, they would have a basic combat ability. Although they weren't considered elites, they could still go to the battlefield. After the baptism of a few more battles, those who survived would be elites. The formation of the infantry was fast. In comparison, the cavalry was too slow. According to Charles's estimates, it would take at least a year for the cavalry to reach a level where they could barely go to the battlefield. This was all thanks to Charles and the other outstanding instructors from the Black Guards. If it were Colin, he might not be able to succeed even after 3 to 5 years of tinkering. When inspecting the infantry, Colin also saw the gloomy Knight of Rigo. This large knight had a bad temper recently. Whenever he had time, he would drag the recruits to the forest in the suburbs for training. Of course, Colin knew that this guy was using the training as an excuse to get the recruits to help him search for the mysterious knight who had ambushed him. However, the Knight of Rigo was destined to not be able to take revenge. The blood slave Cynthia was usually hidden in the basement of the Red Castle by Colin. After borrowing blood from the Knight of Rigo twice, Colin had successfully advanced to level 3. If outsiders knew about this speed, they would probably call Colin a genius. After inspecting the infantry's training, Colin returned to the Red Castle. After drinking a cup of deer blood wine, he took an afternoon nap. Colin's days as a hands-off boss were very comfortable. However, his leisurely time was soon interrupted. Butler Eamon hurried over and reported, "Master, a team of trolls has arrived on the icy plains." Trolls? Colin's heart tightened. How many of them are there? About 100 of them. They claim to be messengers heading to chilly winter. They are passing by Icestone City and wish to meet you. Messengers? Colin heaved a sigh of relief. Colin thought for a moment with his chin in his hand before nodding. All right, then I'll meet the trolls' messengers. Chapter 85. Under the guidance of the butler, Eamon, a young troll walked through a long corridor and arrived at the inner courtyard of the Red Castle. This troll seemed to be entering a human castle for the first time. He looked around curiously along the way. Eamon stopped outside a room and nodded to the young troll. He made an inviting gesture and said, "Mr. Messenger, the Viscount's is waiting for you in the study." Okay. The troll smiled, adjusted his collar, and pushed the door open. Colin happened to look up, but he didn't get up. He just smiled and said, "Welcome, Mr. Messenger. Please take a seat." Honorable Viscount Angley, thank you for your hospitality. The young troll didn't mind Colin's rudeness and was still smiling. The maid walked in quietly, placed a cup of coffee on the table in front of the troll, and then left. Try it. It's the Su Duo family's treasured coffee. Colin made an inviting gesture and said, "This is one of the few things they left behind that I like." The troll first picked up the mug and sniffed it before putting it into his mouth. He closed his eyes and slowly savored the taste. The whole process was elegant and calm. It seemed that he was a troll noble in a high position. Rich fruity aroma, bold and unrestrained acidity. This should be the premium Yega coffee from the Sidamo region. Colin was stunned. He didn't expect this troll to be a coffee expert. You're amazing. You can even taste this. Although he didn't know if the troll was right, Colin couldn't show his fear now. He immediately pretended that he knew very well. At the same time, he cursed in his heart. Didn't they say that trolls only knew how to fight and kill? Why is this one so pretentious? The young troll took another sip of coffee. There was a hint of nostalgia in his reserved expression. More than 1,000 years ago, the Hidamo area was still our family's territory. Haha, now that I think about it, it does have the taste of my hometown. Colin was slightly surprised and asked curiously, "May I know your name?" The young troll stood up and made a standard human noble bow. "My name is Gunben Vulcan, son of Gunbik Vulcan, southern prince of the Troll Empire." Pooh! Colin, who was drinking coffee, spat it out. Ahem, I'm sorry. I choked. Colin picked up his handkerchief and lowered his head to wipe off the water stains on his body. He didn't want the other party to see the unconcealable smile on his face. "Okamoto? Why aren't you called Durex?" After wiping for a while, Colin finally controlled his facial expression and sat back down. Although Okamoto wondered why Colin suddenly lost his composure after hearing his name, he was too embarrassed to ask. "I didn't expect that Your Highness the Prince would personally go to the northern frontier. I've neglected you. Although Colin said that, His body was still leaning loosely against the back of the chair. He didn't seem to care about the troll prince at all. Of course, Okamoto wouldn't be angry. At least he wouldn't show it. After all, the anger of the loser was completely meaningless in front of the winner. No, this is what I should do. Over the years, the Troll Empire and the Northern Frontier have fought more and more, causing both sides to suffer disastrous losses. Every time I think of my comrades who died on the front lines, my heart aches. Sigh. I'm sure that you and the Duke of St. Hilda are the same as me. We don't want to see the war continue. That's why I came to the Northern Frontier this time with a longing for peace and a yearning for friendship between both sides. Okamoto was still giving an impassioned speech, and Colin already understood the other party's intentions. Don't be fooled by the pompous words of the Troll Empire's new southern prince, saying that he didn't want to see the war continue. In fact, he had come to ask for peace because he couldn't win. Colin rubbed his chin, wondering if the Duke of St. Hilda would agree to this request. Now that the troll army had been destroyed, they were no longer able to resist the invasion of the northern frontier. Would the Duke give up such a good opportunity to pursue the victory? Even if there was no value in occupying the Blue Ice Field, they could still take advantage of this opportunity to plunder the Troll Empire and prevent them from recuperating. Just as Colin was daydreaming, a name that came out from Okamoto's mouth suddenly pulled him back to reality. What? Vera? Did you mention Miss Vera just now? As soon as he heard Vera's name, Colin immediately recovered. Yes. Okamoto lowered his head and replied in a deep voice. The viscounts in front of him had been rude to him time and time again, and he was about to lose control of his inner anger. However, he took a deep breath and regained his smile before he explained patiently. I was just saying that I heard that the Duke's adopted daughter, Miss Vera, is about to have her coming-of-age ceremony. So I also prepared a gift for her. I want to take this opportunity to get to know Miss Vera. Colin narrowed his eyes as he sensed that something was wrong. Oh, is that so? I also received an invitation to Miss Vera's coming-of-age ceremony 2 days ago. Then let's set off for Winter City together tomorrow. It would be my pleasure. At this point, Colin was already wary of the young prince of the Troll Empire. This was because he felt that the other party might have designs on Vera. Was this guy here to have a peace talk, or was he here to get married? Just as Colin was about to ask him to leave, Prince Okamoto suddenly noticed the blade of judgment hanging on the wall. He stared at it for a long time, and there was a flash of disbelief in his eyes. Sir Viscounts, may I ask? Is that knight's sword the blade of judgment? Yes. It was given to me by the Duke during his conferment. The expression on Prince Okamoto's face suddenly became very strange. There was envy, reverence, and a trace of sympathy. Just as Colin felt that the prince's gaze was a little strange, Prince Okamoto suddenly smiled and said, Sir Viscounts, I don't know if you have heard of His Highness Otto Volkin. Otto? Colin shook his head. He had never heard of this name before. But he knew that this was also a member of the Troll Empire. His Highness Otto is my uncle, and the northern prince of the Troll Empire. He has recently successfully entered the sanctuary realm. Colin frowned as he did not know why Okamoto suddenly mentioned this, but he still congratulated him perfunctorily. Oh, is that so? Then congratulations to you. The Troll Empire finally has another paladin. Yes, after 100 years, the Empire has finally given birth to another paladin. Okamoto's smile became brighter. However, after my uncle successfully advanced to the sanctuary realm, he said that he would soon have another duel with the owner of the Blade of Judgment. We will wipe away the disgrace of the previous emperor, His Majesty Leo. Colin was dumbfounded. A paladin wanted to duel with him? Could it be that the Duke of St. Hilda had given him this sword because of this? This was a huge rock falling from the sky. Chapter 86. The troll messengers stayed in Icestone City for a day, before continuing their journey to Winter City. Colin also set off with them. This time, he only brought Knight Leg and 100 guards with him to Frostwinter Castle. He left Knight Ciara and Knight Raymond in Icestone City to continue training the troops. He also left the affairs of the territory to Eamon and Quincy. Originally, her sister Caitlin had wanted to come along as well, But when she heard that there was finally news of her long-lost husband, she ran off to Fallen Eagle City. Colin didn't stop her. He wasn't sure if his sister was involved in the plot to kill him back then, so he let her be. Anyway, he would settle the score with the Oman family sooner or later. He didn't have enough evidence and power. However, he already had an excellent chess piece. When the time was right, he would take revenge for what happened back then. And this chess piece, blood slave Cynthia, had also been brought out by Colin this time. She was tailing the troops from 1,000 meters away. Colin realized that the furthest he could give orders to the blood slave was 3,000 meters away. Any further, and he would lose contact. On the way to Winter City, the troll prince often approached Colin with a warm attitude. However, Colin's attitude was perfunctory. Firstly, he felt that the troll prince might covet Vera. Secondly, the news of the sacred samurai challenging him to a duel made him unhappy. However, Colin wasn't too worried about this. After all, when the troll's sacred samurai said that, he was obviously targeting the Duke of St. Hilda. Colin wasn't the one who cut off the head of the previous troll emperor, even though he was now the owner of Judgment Blade. However, if a sacred samurai challenged a rank 3 knight to a duel, he would become the laughingstock of the world. The sacred samurai probably couldn't afford to lose face. As for who the northern frontier would send to deal with the sacred samurai, that wasn't something Colin had to worry about. The Duke of St. Hilda probably wouldn't take the field himself, as that would be suicide. As far as Colin could remember, there were no paladins in the northern frontier. However, the Radiance Empire did, and there were 2 of them. The paladins of the giant demon empire had come knocking on their door. Presumably, these 2 paladins wouldn't sit idly by. In any case, it had nothing to do with the mere viscounts like Colin. Prince Okamoto had only wanted to scare Colin and take revenge on Colin for looking down on him. Colin naturally wouldn't give this troll messenger any face, even if the other party was a prince. A loser was a loser. After personally experiencing that battle and witnessing the Black Cavalry slaughtering an army of 300,000 trolls, as if they were pigs, Colin found it hard to look at the northern frontier's greatest enemy in the eye. Prince Okamoto didn't care about Colin's coldness at all. Perhaps he was already mentally prepared, as this prince's attitude was very humble. He took good care of Colin along the way, as if he had really become Colin's servant. This aroused Colin's wariness. This Prince Okamoto couldn't be a Gojien type of person, could he? On the surface, he was serving the enemy to reduce his threat, but in reality, he was enduring hardships and secretly accumulating the power for revenge. Colin was secretly on guard and began to think of ways to disrupt the other party's peace talks. He couldn't let the trolls succeed in catching their breath. The team didn't travel very quickly, and it took them 8 days to reach Winter Castle. Colin had been to this central city of the northern frontier before, but every time he came, he would be deeply shocked by it. Winter Castle was built on a mountain. It was like a giant beast overlooking the entire northern frontier. The magnificent city wall, which was more than 30 meters tall, was built halfway up the mountain. The higher the wall, the higher the status of the people who lived there. And on the top of the mountain, which was shrouded in clouds all year round, stood the house of St. Hilda's Castle, Lion's Roar Castle. It was said that this was the highest castle in the entire northern frontier, and even the entire Radiant Empire. It was hard to imagine how much effort had been put into building it. The towering city made everyone speechless for a while, especially those trolls, who had never seen such a miraculous building complex, couldn't help but show fear on their faces. Listen to my roar. It is the anger of the kingdom of heaven. Okamoto looked at the magnificent castle standing high in the clouds, and couldn't help but recite the language of the house of St. Hilda. When he heard this sentence before, this troll prince didn't think much of it. He felt that no matter how powerful the house of St. Hilda was, it wasn't qualified to put the words kingdom of heaven into the language of the clan. But now he understood. Anyone who lived in that castle and looked down on all living things would inevitably have the illusion that they were the representatives of God in the world. Prince Okamoto didn't know if it was because he recalled the terrifying scene of the Black Cavalry charging together, but he couldn't help but tremble. Colin appreciated the fear of the trolls, and couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as a northern frontier citizen. After you, Your Highness Okamoto. Oh, okay. After you, Your Excellency Viscounts. Prince Okamoto's waist seemed to be bent lower than before. The group of people went up the mountain and came to the city gate halfway up the mountain. The closer they got, the more they could feel the enormous pressure emitted by the city. It was as if there was really a lion entrenched in the mountains, coldly watching everyone. At this time, there was a long line at the city gate. It was the people who were waiting to enter the city for inspection. However, as a noble, Colin obviously didn't need to line up. When the roaring White Bear's flag was displayed, the crowd quickly split to the sides and made way for Colin and his group. The trolls also benefited from Colin's presence and followed him to the city gate. However, the gazes of the people around them weren't very friendly. If they hadn't followed behind Colin and made the people think that they were the captives or slaves of the Viscounts, perhaps there would have been people rushing up to beat them up. When they arrived at the city gate, the guard's attitude towards Colin was very attentive. After confirming his identity, he immediately let them pass. The troll's treatment was completely different. Even though Prince Okamoto had already taken out his proof of identity, and the letter personally signed by the troll emperor, the guard still asked all sorts of questions and made things difficult for them. He had a look of distrust on his face. He even repeatedly searched their luggage and took out everything inside. His attitude was extremely bad. Colin chuckled as he watched from the side. He had no intention of stepping forward to help. Many trolls were infuriated by the guard's attitude and were on the verge of exploding. However, not only did the guards not restrain themselves, they even provoked them even more. It was as if they couldn't wait for the trolls to provoke them first, so that they would have a reason to kill them. Prince Okamoto maintained his smile from beginning to end. He didn't seem to be affected by favor or humiliation. No matter how the guards made things difficult for him, he patiently explained. His restraint also made the other trolls calm down. When the guards saw how terrified the trolls were, they gradually lost interest and waved their hands to let them enter the city. Your Excellency Viscounts, sorry to have kept you waiting. Your country's guards are too dutiful. Colin looked at the other party's smiling face. Even though he knew that it was fake, he couldn't help but admire the other party's patience. This young troll prince was indeed a character. Just as he was about to call Prince Okamoto into the city, there was a slight commotion at the city gate. Colin looked up and saw a team of half-elves outside the city gate. Chapter 87. Humans were a special existence in this world. They didn't have any reproductive isolation with other races. Thinking about it carefully, this was a wonderful thing. A troll and an elf couldn't produce offspring. But a human, regardless of whether he was with a troll or an elf, could produce offspring. Therefore, some human scholars claimed that humans were the chosen race of God. Toward this sort of claim, the other races all expressed that it was complete nonsense. But no matter what, only humans could reproduce with other races. This was an ironclad fact. The offspring of humans and elves were called half-elves. The offspring of beasts were called half-orcs. The offspring of trolls were called half-trolls, and so on. However, the race that produced the most offspring with humans was the elves. After all, the elves were more in line with humans' aesthetics. As for the beasts, trolls, nagas, and gnomes, other than warriors with unique tastes, very few humans could eat them. Therefore, creatures like half-beastmen and half-trolls were very rare. But there were many half-elves. They had even formed a new race and built a kingdom. When the elves retreated into the radiant moon forest, the humans occupied the most fertile land in the center of the continent and suppressed the other races. The half-elven kingdom wisely chose to become a vassal of the Radiant Empire. Because it was located between the northern frontier and the eastern region of the empire, the half-elven kingdom and the House of St. Hilda had a long history of friendship. Therefore, it wasn't strange for them to appear in chilly winter. But Colin couldn't help but recall the words that the Duke of St. Hilda said to him when he left Icestone City. He felt that the Duke had some thoughts about the half-elven kingdom. Could it be that the arrival of the half-elves in chilly winter was part of the Duke's plan? That's the Silvermoon Guard of the half-elven kingdom. It seems that there are half-elven royalty in this team. Hearing Okamoto's words, Colin pretended to nod. He didn't recognize the insignia on the armor of the half-elven guards. After all, he was the son of a baron in the countryside, and had never seen the exclusive guards of the half-elven royalty. Moreover, there wasn't much useful information about the half-elf kingdom in his previous life. He only found the name of the half-elf king, and the location of the half-elf capital. The rest of his memories were a bunch of rumors about beautiful half-elf women. At this moment, this group of half-elves had already arrived at the city gate. A young and beautiful half-elf stepped out of the crowd and came before the guard. She handed over a badge and an invitation letter. Half-elves were famous for their beauty in this world. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to breed with humans to form a new race. This young half-elf clearly came from a large noble family. That kind of reserved, arrogant, and elegant demeanor was simply the exclusive label of a large noble family. It was impossible for an ordinary small noble family to nurture such a person. She was tall and wore an elegant white robe. Her silk-like silver hair hung straight from her head to her waist. She had a pair of amber eyes, a delicate nose, pointed ears, and an Adam's apple. Fuck. Only then did Colin come to his senses. This guy turned out to be a man. Just as Colin was secretly complaining, Okamoto seemed to have recognized the half-elf. He should be the second prince of the half-elf kingdom, Tup Madawin. Do you know him? Okamoto shook his head. I don't know him. However, this is actually not that difficult to guess. Colin rolled his eyes as he knew that the troll was ready to show off again. However, he didn't ask, "How did you guess?" He didn't want this troll to get what he wanted. Okamoto waited for a while, but Colin didn't ask him any questions. However, he wasn't embarrassed at all. Instead, he smiled faintly and explained to himself, "The only person who is qualified to represent the half-elf royal family to attend Miss Vera's coming-of-age ceremony must be a direct descendant of the House of Medea. The current half-elf king only has 2 sons. The eldest son is already more than 40 years old. Therefore, it can only be the second prince." "Oh," Colin responded faintly. Colin's cold response didn't make Okamoto shut up. Instead, he became even more talkative. "Your Excellency Viscounts, do you know? Prince Tup is actually not the biological son of the half-elf king. He is actually adopted." Colin's interest was piqued. This was because he suddenly remembered that Vera was also the Duke's adopted daughter. Could it be that Prince Tup's life was also hiding some strange stories? However, he still ignored Okamoto. "I don't want you to pretend." However, Okamoto seemed determined to continue pretending. "You may be curious as to why the half-elf king would adopt another son when he already has one." Colin didn't speak and continued to hold back. Okamoto opened his mouth again and continued. "In fact, this is the request of the half-elf queen consort. This is because the current half-elf queen consort was remarried after the death of the previous queen consort. But at that time, the half-elf king was already close to 70 years old. At such an old age, no matter how beautiful the new queen consort was, he couldn't make her pregnant with his child. Therefore, it is said that in order to make up for the new queen consort's regret, the king adopted a child from the new queen consort's family and became the new queen consort's son. This is the second Prince Tup." Colin blinked. He couldn't help but admire the troll prince beside him. He actually knew so much about the half-elf royal family's gossip. Therefore, this troll still had the capital to pretend. Just as Colin was about to ask Prince Okamoto more about the half-elf royal family's gossip, the half-elf noble had already entered the city. When he saw Colin's team, he walked straight towards them. After some introductions, Colin discovered that Prince Okamoto's guess was right. It really was the second prince. After the 3 of them exchanged pleasantries, they walked towards the Lion's Roar Castle at the top of the mountain. The higher they went, the sparser the buildings and fewer the pedestrians. It was clear that the people living around the Lion's Roar Castle were rich and noble. Ordinary civilians wouldn't come to this height. After about 2 hours, everyone finally arrived at the Lion's Roar Castle. The first thing that came into view was the huge 50-meter-tall golden lion statue that stood in front of the castle. Its angry and roaring posture gave people a strong visual shock. This huge castle had a total of 5 floors, arranged in a conical shape, and rose higher with each floor. The castle's gate was wide open. In addition to the fully armed guards, there was also an old man dressed as a butler. After seeing Colin's group, the old butler walked out of the door and slightly bowed. He revealed an impeccable smile and said, "Welcome to the Lion's Roar Castle." Chapter 88. Under the guidance of the servant, Colin arrived at his room in the Lion's Roar Castle. It was a long journey, and it was inevitable that he would be covered in dust. Therefore, Colin naturally had to take a bath and change into a clean set of clothes. This was also a form of respect for the first family in the northern frontier. Knock, knock, knock. As soon as he changed into a clean set of aristocratic casual clothes, someone knocked on his door. Colin thought that it was the servant who had called him for dinner. However, it was obviously still early. Moreover, the butler had told him that there would be a banquet tonight. Out of curiosity, Colin opened the door. Then, a flash of surprise flashed across his face. Outside the door was Vera, who he had not seen for a long time. Today Vera was wearing a red velvet coat. Her long golden hair was still wet, and it seemed that she had just taken a bath not long ago. Her white skin was exuding a charming blush, and it seemed that she could not stand Colin's burning gaze. "Long time no see, Miss Vera." "Long time no see, Colin." The female mage smiled slightly, revealing 2 faint dimples. She looked very cute. "This should be your first time in the Lion's Roar Castle, right?" "Yes." Colin, the country bumpkin, nodded honestly. Vera smiled, turned around and waved at Colin. "Let's go, I will show you around." "Okay, Miss Tour Guide." Hee hee. The crisp laughter still echoed in the corridor, but Vera's figure had already disappeared around the corner. Colin closed the door and chased after the faint rose fragrance. This is the front yard. Originally, there were a lot of osmanthus trees planted here. However, my father thought that their fragrance was too strong, so he replaced all of them. This is the tower. When I was a child, I liked to climb up there because I could see very far away. However, my father always said that girls should not climb so high. Over there is the kitchen and the warehouse. When I was a child, I liked to hide there when I played hide and seek with Charles and Adams. They always could not find me, haha. However, the old butler would get angry every time. He always said that this is not a place for a lady. "Humph, you are as old-fashioned as my father." "That's the garden, my favorite place." "That's the church." Vera seemed to have transformed into a chirping little bird as she kept introducing everything about the Lion's Roar Fortress to Colin, as well as the beautiful memories that she had left in this place. As she spoke, Colin seemed to see that innocent, cute, and somewhat eccentric little girl in a trance. "This is the place I was most afraid of when I was young." Vera suddenly lowered her voice. Colin also felt that the atmosphere around him seemed to have become heavy. He curiously followed Vera into a courtyard in the depths of the castle. However, he suddenly froze on the spot. Numerous gazes shot towards him like sharp arrows, rendering him unable to move at all. Looking up, Colin was shocked to discover that the owners of these gazes were actually huge statues. "These are the paladins from the House of St. Hilda's history," Vera said with a serious expression on her face. "Paladin?" Colin suddenly realized that it was no wonder that they could have such a powerful aura. After a quick count, Colin found that there were a total of 12 statues here. In other words, in more than 1,000 years, the House of St. Hilda had only given birth to 12 paladins. They were the guarantee of the family's prosperity and the embodiment of its noble bloodline. They were also the source of the House of St. Hilda's supreme glory. At the same time, Colin also noticed that the eyes of these paladin statues seemed to have been carefully designed. They were all looking in the same direction, which was the entrance of the courtyard. The people who had just walked in were caught off guard and had to bear so many gazes. Even if they were all statues, it was still enough to make a timid person tremble in fear. "This is Paladin Francois. This is Paladin Britta. This is Paladin Limes." Vera pointed at the statues and introduced them to Colin one by one. Finally, the two of them came to the largest statue placed in the center of the courtyard. "This is the first paladin of the House of St. Hilda, the Lion of Fire Ryan St. Hilda." Colin raised his head and looked at the huge statue that was more than 10 meters tall. His heart trembled slightly. the pioneer of the northern frontier, the gravedigger of the trolls, the northern barrier of the empire. These series of glorious titles were all about the first paladin of the House of St. Hilda. Colin easily found the relevant information about him from his memory. More than half of the territory of the northern frontier was conquered by Paladin Ryan more than 1,000 years ago. More importantly, he had completely broken the backbone of the giant demon clan. He had established the military and psychological superiority of the northern frontier over the Troll Empire. Even if more than 1,000 years had passed, the trolls could only linger on in the ice fields. They could no longer return to their ancestral land. The story of the paladin's life had long been sung by bards thousands of times, but it was still very popular. The reason why the people of the northern frontier recognized the House of St. Hilda was most likely because of Paladin Ryan. This was also the reason why the other families had never dared to dream of becoming the ruler of the northern frontier. The northern frontier could only be defended by the House of St. Hilda. Colin, do you know? Actually, I used to want to become a paladin. Is that so? Colin turned his head and looked at the female mage. She was staring at the statue of Paladin Ryan with a face full of admiration. Yes. I had planned to ask my father to help me arrange a baptism ceremony on my 10th birthday. But, when I was 6 years old, my father sent me to Yevil to study arcana. Why did the Duke send you to study arcana? Colin took the opportunity to ask the question that had always been on his mind. In this world, the nobles and the mages were natural enemies. Vera was the adopted daughter of the Duke, so no matter how he looked at it, she should not have anything to do with a mage. At that time, my father told me that if I wanted to know the truth about this world, then I should go to Yevil. Colin frowned. So you believed him? Why not? That is my father. Colin rolled his eyes and thought to himself, what a gullible little girl. From the perspective of this old silver coin, the Duke sent Vera to Yevil because he wanted her to stay away from the center of power in the northern frontier. After becoming a mage, it would be even more difficult for Vera to inherit the title of the Duke. In short, the Duke was guarding against his younger brother. However, obviously, Marquis Garcia still found an opportunity to take advantage of the chaos in the northern frontier, to let Vera return to the northern frontier. He had even received the Duke's promise that after Charles, Vera would be the first in line to inherit the title of the Duke. Unfortunately, the Duke went back on his word in the end. He had broken his promise to his younger brother. Since then, the hatred had been planted, and he did not know when it would break out. So, have you found the truth about this world? Not yet. Vera pursed her lips and said with a firm look on her face. But I firmly believe that this path is the right one. My relentless pursuit of the truth of the arcana will lead me to the truth of this world one day. Colin was about to continue teasing the naive female mage when he suddenly heard footsteps behind him. Miss Vera Viscount Angley, the Queen's carriage is about to arrive at the Lion's Roar Fortress. The Queen? Aunt. Chapter 89. When he heard Vera call her aunt, Colin came to a realization. The Empress of the Radiant Empire was the sister of the Duke of St. Hilda. It was said that before the Empress was married, her beauty was already the best in the northern frontier. Countless nobles flocked to her and pursued her crazily. However, the most charming flower in the northern frontier was eventually plucked by the Emperor of the Radiant Empire. Empress Medela had a good reputation in the empire. She was noble and elegant, kind, devout, and had given birth to a son and a daughter for the emperor. She could be said to be a model empress. Quick, Colin, let's go and welcome my aunt. Vera lifted her skirt and trotted forward. Colin hurriedly followed her. Seeing her excited appearance, he asked curiously, Are you that close to the empress? Yes. In my heart, my aunt is a perfect lady. She is my idol. When the two of them arrived at the main gate of the castle, a large number of nobles had already gathered there. Even the Duke of St. Hilda came to welcome his sister in person. The sound of hooves could be heard clearly, and then a neat convoy gradually appeared in front of everyone. 8 knights in red full-body armor rode at the front of the convoy. Each of them held a white flame flag in their hands. That was the emblem of the imperial family, the San Lorenzo family. Unlike the ordinary nobles who generally used animals as their family emblem, the symbol of the imperial family was a burning flame. More than 1,000 years ago, this humble flame swept across the entire continent with the force of a prairie fire, burning all the large and small human kingdoms at that time. It ended the history of the human race being fragmented and established a unified empire. A luxurious carriage slowly drove into the castle gate. A knight personally opened the magnificent golden wooden door of the carriage and welcomed a beautiful noble lady out. In an instant, the whole castle seemed to be illuminated by her brilliance. "Your Highness," the nobles who came to welcome her bowed. Colin quietly raised his head and looked at the beautiful empress. She wore a red low-cut spider silk robe, and her golden hair casually draped over her fair shoulders like a waterfall. Her watery eyes were like a bottomless pool of water. It reflected the primitive desire that every man dared not speak of in the deepest part of their hearts. Colin hurriedly lowered his head, not daring to look again. "Brother, you've gained weight again." The Empress' voice was soft and sweet, as if she was acting coquettishly to her lover. "Ha ha ha." The Duke of St. Hilda laughed out loud and rubbed his round belly. "I can't compete with the previous dukes of the north in terms of achievements, so I have to work on my weight." The Empress smiled before she looked at Vera, who was standing behind the Duke. "Vera, come over here." Vera quickly stepped forward and held the Empress' hand. She smiled and said, "Auntie, you are still so beautiful." When the Empress heard Vera's words, she smiled and tidied up Vera's hair. She shook her head and said, "Auntie is already old, unlike you who is still in your prime. I believe that after this coming-of-age ceremony, there will be countless noble men who will crazily pursue you." In fact, the Empress was not that old. She was just over 30 years old, and was in the most perfect period of a woman's life. She was still young and inexperienced, but her mature charm was already quietly blooming. When she stood next to Vera, they did not look like aunt and niece at all. Instead, they looked more like sisters. "No." Vera blushed and shook the Empress' arm gently. "I don't want to get married so early." Okay. If you don't want to get married, then don't get married. Let those men suffer for a few more years." The two beauties talked and laughed as they walked into the castle. Colin secretly admired the genes of the House of St. Hilda as he peeked at them. When she arrived in front of Marquis Garcia, Empress Medela tilted her head slightly and said with a smile, "Second brother, do you still not like to smile?" The corners of Marquis Garcia's mouth twitched and he said helplessly, "Your Highness, I am already smiling." The Empress shook her head. She was a little helpless when it came to this stubborn man. She had no choice but to change the topic. "I heard that you have won another battle recently. The 300,000 troll army was completely wiped out. Such a great victory has not been seen on the northern frontier for a long time." His Majesty was also very happy when he heard the news. Therefore, he specially ordered me to bring you his reward. However, tomorrow is Vera's coming-of-age ceremony. I will give you the reward after that. After all, we cannot steal the limelight from our little princess. Okay. Marquis Garcia nodded indifferently. "Auntie, I am not a princess. Besides, I don't need to worry about uncle stealing the limelight." Vera protested as she shook the Empress' arm shyly. The Empress patted Vera's little hand gently and comforted the spoiled little girl. Then, she glanced at the crowd and asked strangely, "Why don't I see Charles?" The atmosphere suddenly became a little stagnant. The Duke of St. Hilda chuckled and explained, "Charles is guarding the border. He can't even come back to attend his sister's coming-of-age ceremony? No, he can't." The Duke's voice was as hard as iron. "He must pay the price for his mistakes. As long as he does not break through the Troll's city, he will not be able to return to Winter City." The Empress sighed and turned to look at Adams, who was behind the Duke. "Do you think that father's punishment for your brother is appropriate?" Marquis Adams immediately straightened his back and said loudly, "I think that father is doing this for my brother's good. What he needs the most now is atonement." The Empress chuckled, and the look in her eyes was a little complicated. She gently raised her hand and stroked Adam's cheek and whispered, "Then you have to be careful. The more power you want, the more responsibility you have to bear. The position of Marquis is not so easy to bear. Auntie, rest assured, I will try my best to do my best. Moreover, as a member of the House of St. Hilda, I have long been ready to bear any hardships. The Empress smiled and turned to the Duke. Adams is really the son who is most like you. The Duke also smiled, but he did not comment on this sentence. When Marquis Adams heard the Empress praise, he suddenly became excited and straightened his back. Wow, our Joyce has grown so tall. The Empress looked at the Duke's youngest son and said in surprise, Yes, Auntie. Welcome back to the Lion's Roar Castle. Joyce was still a little reserved. When Medela married into the royal family, Joyce was still young, so this beautiful aunt was a little unfamiliar to him. The Empress smiled and touched Joyce's hair. Then, she walked past the St. Hilda family and greeted the rest of the nobles. Thank you for welcoming me. As a member of the House of St. Hilda, I also welcome you to the Lion's Roar Castle. I hope that you can enjoy a wonderful and happy time here. Also, I hope that you can witness my niece's, Vera St. Hilda's coming-of-age ceremony. After saying this, the Empress and the Duke of St. Hilda walked side by side into the castle. The main characters were all present. The ceremony was about to begin. Chapter 90. This is the flesh of the Lord, and he gave it up for us. You should eat it. The Archbishop's voice echoed in the quiet and solemn main hall of the church. Vera respectfully took the Holy Communion from the Archbishop and put it into her mouth. This is the blood of the Lord, and he gave it to you for us. You should drink it. The Archbishop then handed Vera a glass of pure holy water. Vera drank it all in one gulp. Standing in the crowd watching the ceremony, Colin suddenly had some new thoughts about the 2 lines of prayer that he was used to. Of course, he had also heard these 2 prayers during his own coming-of-age ceremony. Every citizen of the Empire of Light was familiar with the story behind these prayers. Legend had it that tens of thousands of years ago, human beings were not as strong as they were now. At that time, the human race was not only bullied and enslaved by various foreign races, but they were also targeted by countless demons. These demons coveted the souls of human beings, and they used all kinds of means, such as deception, temptation, and intimidation, to make human beings offer their souls. At that time, the human race was shrouded in darkness. That was until the appearance of the God of Light. According to the records in the Book of Light, the God of Light sacrificed his own body in order to save the fallen human race. His flesh became the Holy Communion, and his blood became the holy water that fell from the sky. After eating the Holy Communion and drinking the holy water, the human race would be able to get rid of the demons and gain the power to fight against them. At this time, the human race finally embarked on the road to rise. In order to commemorate the sacrifice of the God of Light, the Church would host such a process of sharing the Holy Communion and holy water during the coming-of-age ceremony. Looking at Vera drinking the holy water in one gulp, Colin licked his lips. He thought of the bottle of pure holy water that had helped him to advance, and he secretly wondered if that was really the blood of the God of Light. Eat the flesh of the Lord, drink the blood of the Lord, and from now on, the God of Light will be with you. The Lord is with me. Vera's coming-of-age ceremony was still going on. Today, the Duke's adopted daughter was wearing a classic white pear flower dress, and her blonde hair was draped over her shoulders. She was not dressed up today, and she did not have any extra jewelry on her body. She only had light makeup on. Even so, she was still breathtakingly beautiful. In addition, she was not wearing shoes. Her fair jade-like feet stepped on the cold marble floor, making people love her and feel sorry for her. The Archbishop finally finished his prayer and placed a crown of thorns on Vera's head. When Colin saw this, he suddenly realized a problem. Vera was a sorcerer, but the coming-of-age ceremony for the children of the nobles had always been presided over by the priests of the Church of Glory. This seemed to be a tacit admission that Vera had already converted to the Radiance Church. Of course, the coming-of-age ceremony did not explicitly require the recipient to be a believer of the Church, but the reason for this was because of the Radiance Empire's nobles. Which one of them didn't believe in the Radiance God? Except for Vera, who was an anomaly. Oh no, the current Vera was no longer an anomaly. After the battle at the Rapids, she had personally told Colin that she had converted to the god of light. However, she also said that in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, she could not make this matter public for the time being. Therefore, as long as Vera did not take the initiative to admit it, the sorcerers of Yule Empire would probably be able to explain that this was the only form of the coming-of-age ceremony for the children of the nobles. If this was the case, Vera's acceptance of the coming-of-age ceremony did not necessarily mean that she believed in the god of light. Unless Yule Empire wanted to fall out with the northern frontier now, the sorcerers could only think of it this way for now. After the archbishop put the crown of thorns on Vera's head, he bowed and retreated. After that, Queen Medela stepped forward and handed a copy of the Book of Glory to Vera. Finally, the Duke of St. Hilda stepped forward and handed a knight's sword to Vera. The crown of thorns symbolized responsibility and dedication. The Book of Glory symbolized wisdom and faith. The knight's sword symbolized courage and strength. At this point, the 18-year-old girl had finally completed her transformation and officially opened a new chapter in her life. After witnessing all of this, the first thought that popped up in Colin's mind was after the coming-of-age ceremony, they could get married. The ceremony was actually over at this point, and then it was time for the banquet that the nobles had been looking forward to for a long time. Of course, the banquet would not be held in the main hall of the church. Under the lead of the Duke of St. Hilda, everyone left the church and came to the atrium of the Lion's Roar Castle. There, the butler had already prepared everything. Food, wine, music, a dance floor. In short, the real night had just begun. After the Duke of St. Hilda finished his opening speech, the banquet officially began. Just like the banquet in Icestone City, many unmarried nobles immediately stared at the focus of tonight's banquet, Vera. Who would be able to invite her to the first dance? Many people looked at Colin. Last time, it was this humble baron's son who had successfully invited Vera, and he was the only one who had succeeded. Now Colin had transformed into Viscount Angley. It seemed that Colin was more confident this time. Therefore, the nobles were a little hesitant. They wanted to see what Colin was going to do first. After all, he was the man most likely to be able to dance with Vera. Colin was still in a relaxed posture, as if he did not realize that a fierce competition had quietly begun. Just as the nobles were hesitating, a troll noble suddenly stood up. Prince Okamoto came in front of Vera, and first greeted her with a standard human noble bow, and then said in a clear voice, "Beautiful Miss Vera, in order to celebrate your coming-of-age ceremony, I have specially prepared a small gift for you. I hope you will like it." After that, Okamoto took a roll of parchment from the servant behind him and slowly unfolded it. It was a map. Colin raised his eyebrows, thinking that this guy wasn't going to play a trick of revealing his true intentions, was he? However, he quickly shook his head and denied his own guess. Even if the trolls really wanted to send an assassin, they would not send Okamoto. They would send the Prince of the North, who was said to have just advanced to the sanctuary. The map was completely unfolded. There was no dagger. There were only 3 big red circles. Okamoto pointed at the 3 red circles on the map and said to Vera, "Dear Miss Vera, my gift is these 3 military fortresses." Colin took a few steps forward and saw the location of the 3 military fortresses. They were all located on the southern border of the Troll Kingdom. What did this mean? Was he going to give away his own defensive line to the enemy? Vera looked at the map in a daze, and she was also a little confused. With her military literacy, she probably did not understand what this meant. However, the Duke of St. Hilda suddenly spoke. "Prince Okamoto, are you saying that these 3 military fortresses will be guarded by the army of the North?" Yes. At this time, the nobles present realized the value of this gift. No, this was not just valuable. It was a sign that the trolls were bowing down to the northern frontier. It was as if the Japanese had sent the Yokota base to the American army and said, "Dad, come and tie the dog chain for me." Chapter 91. Colin knew that Prince Okamoto had come to the northern frontier to ask for peace. As the defeated party, if Okamoto wanted the northern frontier to agree to the peace talks, he would have to compromise and lower his stance. However, He did not expect that the other party would actually lower his stance so much. He was almost kneeling on the ground. It was as if the Duke of St. Hilda did not forgive them, because it would damage the knight's virtue of forgiveness. But to be honest, Colin felt that this young troll prince was quite smart. This was because the Troll Empire had already suffered heavy losses. 300,000 elite soldiers had been wiped out, and the trolls wouldn't be able to recover without 3 to 5 years of rest. As the Troll Empire's biggest enemy, the northern frontier would definitely not let go of such a good opportunity. They would definitely not let the Troll Empire recover. Therefore, in Colin's opinion, this peace talks were just wishful thinking on the part of the Troll Empire. But who would have thought that Prince Okamoto would actually be so crazy? Since he could not fight against the northern frontier, then he might as well not fight. He gave away all the military outposts on his border, because he wanted to tell the Duke of St. Hilda that he was no longer a threat to him. I'm no longer a threat to you. Please don't beat me up again. It had to be said that this was a crazy choice. However, it might really be able to move the Duke of St. Hilda's heart. In particular, Colin was very clear that the biggest threat in the eyes of the Duke of St. Hilda was actually Marquis Garcia, his brother who had just been betrayed by him. Would the Duke agree to the peace talks with the Troll Empire and focus on solving the internal conflicts? The atmosphere of the banquet suddenly became a little heavy. Vera was also a little helpless at this time. She could only look at the Duke of St. Hilda with a pleading look. The Duke put down the wine glass in his hand and said in a low voice, "Prince Okamoto, this gift of yours seems a little too expensive." Prince Okamoto shook his head with a smile. "Your Excellency, how can this be considered valuable? In fact, I even feel that such a gift is not worthy of Miss Vera's status at all. Therefore, I have decided to solemnly promise you that while I am the southern prince of the giant demon empire, I will not take the initiative to start a war with the northern frontier." Whoosh! The entire audience was in an uproar. Everyone was shocked by the generosity of this giant demon prince. The Duke of St. Hilda looked at Okamoto with bright eyes. "Is this your gift?" "Yes." Prince Okamoto placed his left hand on his chest before he bowed deeply to the Duke of St. Hilda. "This is also the betrothal gift that I would like to give to Miss Vera." Whoosh! This time, the crowd reacted even more strongly, as if they had poked a hornet's nest. The male nobles who were bent on pursuing Vera glared at the troll prince angrily. They could not wait to kick the troll prince to the ground and curse at him. "Do you think you are worthy?" Vera's small face instantly turned red. Then, her face gradually turned white. This was because she saw that her father did not reject Prince Okamoto's request immediately. Instead, he was deep in thought, as if he was really considering the feasibility of this matter. Vera panicked. She did not want to marry someone who was thousands of miles away in the firmament ice field, let alone marry a giant demon. In a panic, she subconsciously looked for a reliable figure in the crowd. Colin also saw Vera's pleading eyes. Originally, he was still a little hesitant. After all, he was just a viscount's. It was actually a little bit too much for him to marry the Duke's adopted daughter. Originally, he had planned to find an opportunity to make some military achievements and raise the rank of the Angeli family again before he came to propose marriage. However, when he saw Vera's big watery eyes looking at him, Colin made up his mind. He could not hesitate any longer. Otherwise, who knew if the Duke would be moved by Prince Okamoto's offer and marry Vera to the firmament ice field? One had to know that this was absolutely not impossible. Vera was not the Duke's biological daughter. More than 10 years ago, he had personally sent her to Yevil. Therefore, he did not have any qualms about sending her to the firmament ice field now. Perhaps, the Duke could not wait to send Vera away at this time. After all, she was a threat to the smooth succession of the Dukes of the North. Therefore, Colin took a few steps forward and said, Duke, please forgive me for offending you." Just as Colin opened his mouth to speak, someone actually took the initiative to step forward. This person was the half-elf prince that Colin had met at the entrance of chilly winter city, Tup Madawin. Prince Tup strode over to the Duke and stood side by side with Prince Okamoto. "I think that you should not agree to this marriage." Colin blinked as he had a bad premonition in his heart. "Why?" The Duke of St. Hilda's tone was emotionless. Because I think that I am more suitable to be Miss Vera's husband. What? Sure enough. Colin, who had already guessed what the half-elf prince was going to say, snorted coldly. At the same time, he was complaining in his heart. Why are you guys so eager to snatch the woman that I like? Ha ha ha. The Duke suddenly laughed. Vera, now that the troll prince and the half-elf prince want to marry you, who do you want to marry? Vera blushed as she shook her head and said, Father, I do not want to get married yet. The Duke shook his head and insisted, Don't say such childish things. You will eventually get married. Why? Are you not interested in either of them? Vera had an awkward expression on her face as she wrung her hands together uneasily. She did not know how to answer this question. Queen Medela suddenly smiled and suggested, Vera, if you are in a difficult position, why don't you let them use the most ancient and most traditional ceremony? A duel to decide who will marry you? As soon as they heard this, the atmosphere in the scene suddenly rose. Two nobles were dueling over the ownership of a beautiful girl. Was there anything more exciting than this? All the male nobles from the northern frontier, who wanted to pursue Vera, also gave up at this time. After all, the two men who stood up to propose at this time were of very high status. Among the nobles from the northern frontier who were present, it was really difficult to find a competitor whose status, age, and appearance matched the two of them. It was no wonder. This was because the noble circle in the northern frontier had just undergone a round of purging. In the past, there might have been a few nobles who could stand up at this time, but they were all beheaded by the Duke. For a time, the noble circle in the northern frontier had a shortage of young people. However, if these two foreigners really plucked the most delicate and noble flower in the northern frontier, then it would be an insult to the northern frontier. Thinking of this, many people turned their eyes to Colin. Although this Viscount Angley's title was not high, and he was not very famous. After all, he had danced with Vera before. Maybe he had a chance. Colin also understood at this time that he had to stand up. If he really let Vera marry someone else, he was afraid that he would regret it for the rest of his life. And Marquis Garcia would probably hunt him down for the rest of his life. So Colin took a deep breath, strode forward and said loudly, Duke. Bang. However, the moment Colin opened his mouth, an accident happened again. Marquis Adams suddenly fell to the ground with a pale face, and his whole body twitched. Screams sounded from all directions. The banquet was suddenly in a mess. Only Colin had a stomach full of words, and he was in a mess in the wind. Can't you let me propose properly? Chapter 92. Duke, I'm sorry, Marquis Adams has returned to the embrace of the Lord. As soon as the Archbishop finished his sentence, the atmosphere in the hall immediately dropped to a freezing point. Everyone could not believe it for a moment. Marquis Adams died just like that? The second son of the Duke of St. Hilda, the first successor to the Lord of the Northern Frontier, died just like that? He even died at a banquet in his own castle. This was too absurd. However, reality was often so absurd. The nobles widened their eyes and covered their mouths. They did not even dare to make a sound of fear, afraid that it would agitate the Duke of St. Hilda. At this time, the Duke was staring at the crystal chandelier on the ceiling in a daze, as if the one who was just declared dead by the Archbishop was not his son, but an unrelated passerby. After an unknown period of time, finally, a voice broke the suffocating silence. Archbishop, how did Adams die? This was Empress Medela's question. Your Highness, I am still not completely sure of the cause of death of the Marquis. We need to do a further autopsy to come to a conclusion. But according to my experience, the Marquis should have died of poisoning. The Empress immediately turned to the knights behind her and ordered, Arrest all the servants who prepared the food tonight, and interrogate them one by one. Yes, after a slight commotion, all the attendants present were arrested. Even the old butler of the House of St. Hilda was no exception. The second son of the Duke was poisoned to death at a banquet in his own castle. This was a great humiliation, especially since the second son was now the first successor to the Dukes of the North. Under such circumstances, even if the Duke of St. Hilda remained silent, everyone could already foresee the impending landslide and tsunami. No matter who the murderer was, the Duke would not let it go. Colin looked at Marquis Adams lying on the ground with a hideous face bleeding from his 7 orifices. Then looked at the Duke of St. Hilda, who was still admiring the crystal chandelier, and finally turned his gaze to Marquis Garcia, who was also silent. His heart became heavier and heavier. Yes, Colin's first suspect was Marquis Garcia, because his motive for committing the crime was too great. Charles had been disinherited, and now Adams was dead. Then, if the Duke's youngest son Joyce were to meet with misfortune, wouldn't Vera become the first in line to inherit the throne of the Dukes of the North? Could it be that this was Marquis Garcia's retaliation to his brother's betrayal of his promise? However, although Marquis Garcia was the most suspicious, Colin felt that this didn't seem like Marquis Garcia's handiwork, because from their previous interactions, Colin had figured out the Marquis temperament. He was not a person who liked to scheme and scheme. Colin felt that Marquis Garcia wouldn't be able to do something as despicable as poisoning. He would rather believe that Marquis Garcia would lead the Black Cavalry to attack Coldwinter than believe that Marquis Garcia would poison his nephew. Could it be someone deliberately poisoned Marquis Adams in order to sow discord between the Duke of St. Hilda and Marquis Garcia? After all, Adams' death made Marquis Garcia the most suspicious. No. Colin immediately realized that he had overlooked an important factor. That was, the promise that the Duke of St. Hilda had made to Marquis Garcia was a secret that very few people knew. Moreover, the fact that Marquis Garcia was Vera's biological father was also a secret that very few people knew. Therefore, even if someone wanted to sow discord between the two brothers, unless they knew these two secrets at the same time, they would never resort to such means. At the very least, Prince Okamoto wouldn't do it. Colin didn't believe that these two secrets could be known by a troll like him. Therefore, he could formulate such a vicious plan. What's more, even if he knew these two secrets, it would be extremely difficult for him to poison Marquis Adams. Moreover, he had poisoned the banquet in the Lion's Roar Castle. Moreover, he had poisoned Marquis Adams with such precision. Colin couldn't figure out how he had done it. Just as Colin was trying to learn from Ku to solve this murder case, the Duke of St. Hilda finally spoke. His voice became particularly hoarse and low, but he wasn't too agitated. In fact, he was even a little too calm. However, everyone could hear the fury that the Duke was suppressing. Prince Okamoto, Prince Tup, although both of you want to marry Vera, Vera can't marry both of you at the same time. Therefore, I can only choose one of you. The Duke of St. Hilda didn't mention the death of Marquis Adams at all. It was as if it was no longer important. He stood up from his seat and walked towards where Okamoto and Tup were standing. Marquis Adams' body was right next to his feet, but he didn't look down. Prince Okamoto, I want to know, if Vera didn't marry you, would you still be willing to negotiate peace with the northern frontier? Prince Okamoto's heart sank, but he still said helplessly, Of course, Your Excellency. My yearning for peace will never change. In fact, he had no other choice. Could the Troll Empire still fight a war with the northern frontier? As long as the northern frontier agreed to negotiate peace, then he could accept any conditions. Okay. The Duke of St. Hilda turned around and called out to the crowd, Nala, come here. A tall little beauty walked quickly to the Duke of St. Hilda's side. Although she wasn't as beautiful as Vera, she was still quite beautiful. The Duke of St. Hilda took Nala's little hand and pushed her in front of Prince Okamoto, saying, This is my niece Nala. She is also a noble St. Hilda. Is she worthy of you, Prince Okamoto? Of course. It is my honor to marry Miss Nala. Prince Okamoto bowed to Nala, and then stretched out his right hand. Nala was obviously still a little confused. She didn't expect that she would be betrothed to a troll by her uncle. However, looking at the Duke of St. Hilda's expressionless face, Nala couldn't bring herself to resist. Therefore, she slowly put her hand in Prince Okamoto's hand. At this point, the Duke of St. Hilda finally squeezed out a smile on his face. He then turned around and shouted at Vera, Vera, come here. Vera, who was still grieving over her brother's sudden death, was suddenly stunned. Then, she slowly walked over to the Duke's side with confusion and hesitation. The Duke held Vera's hand and looked at the half-elf prince in front of him. Prince Tup, tell me that you will treat her well. Prince Tup was stunned for a while. Obviously, he was completely shocked by the huge surprise that had fallen from the sky. After a long while, he finally stepped forward with a red face and said excitedly, Duke, I am willing to swear that I will never let Vera down in this life. Otherwise, I will go to hell after I die and suffer endless torture for eternity. Father, Vera was also stunned. She had never thought that she would be married off by her father like this. Moreover, she was married off to another country, to a stranger that she had only met a few times. She was just about to break free from the Duke's hand when she suddenly froze. This was because she saw the Duke looking at her. It was a look that she had never seen before. It was exhaustion, disappointment, anger, and even fear. At this moment, Vera suddenly realized that her father, who used to be omnipotent, the Duke who had killed people on the northern frontier, had also become old at this time. In a trance, she felt as if she had returned to 10 years ago when the Duke wanted to send her to Yevil to study arcana. At that time she had tried to resist. However, the Duke had made her kneel in front of the statues of the 12 paladins of the family for one day and one night before he finally told her that, You are a Saint Hilda. While you are enjoying the glory of this family name, you should also not forget the heavy burden that you have to bear. At this moment, facing such a situation, Vera was about to refuse, but she could not bring herself to say it. She could only watch as the Duke held her hand and slowly walked towards Prince Tup. However, just as Vera's hand was about to fall into Prince Tup's hand, a voice suddenly sounded. Duke, I object to this marriage. Chapter 93. Prince Tup had never hated anyone so much before. At this time, facing Vera's slender hand, the half-elf prince had no choice but to turn around and look at the man who had objected to the marriage. Colin Viscount Angley. After hearing Colin's voice, Vera's face that was as pale as a sheet of paper regained its luster. Her large blue eyes stared fixedly at Colin, filled with longing and apprehension. She was looking forward to her own redemption. Colin, why are you objecting to this marriage? The Duke of St. Hilda asked in a cold tone. Colin walked out of the crowd and walked in front of the Duke of St. Hilda calmly. After bowing respectfully, he said in a firm tone, Duke, I have admired Miss Vera for a long time. Therefore, I sincerely hope that you can give me a chance to fulfill my long-cherished wish. As soon as Colin finished speaking, before the Duke of St. Hilda could say anything, Prince Tup, who was next to him, jumped out like a wild cat. Let's duel. Viscount Angley, let us decide who is qualified to marry Miss Vera in a man's way. Immediately after that, a white glove was thrown at Colin's feet. Colin raised his eyebrows and secretly complained. Do you nobles always carry white gloves with you? This was the second time that he had been invited to a duel. The last time, it was that crazy woman Cynthia. At that time, Colin did not pick up her glove. However, this time Colin knew that he could not back down. However, just as he was about to bend down and pick up Prince Tup's white glove, the Duke of St. Hilda reminded him, Colin, you have to think carefully. Prince Tup is a third-order knight. Half-elves were mixed blood between humans and elves. They could choose the human's special profession, knight, or the elven's special profession, ranger. But in the current world, the humans had established the Radiant Empire, while the elves had disappeared into the depths of the Radiant Moon Forest. It was easy to guess the half-elf noble's choice. Most of them had chosen to serve the god of light, so it was not strange that Prince Tup was a knight. However, he was actually a knight of the third step. For a half-elf prince of his age, he was definitely a genius. However, Colin did not feel guilty. He was also stage 3 now. Moreover, he had an immortal body, which was a huge advantage in a duel. Thus Colin's lips curled into a cold smile. Your Excellency the Duke, I've thought it through. I'm willing to accept Prince Tup's duel invitation. For the sake of Miss Vera, I will not hesitate to sacrifice my life for her. However, just as Colin's hand was about to touch the white gloves on the ground, Vera suddenly stopped him. No, Colin, don't do this. Although Colin felt that he had the confidence to defeat Prince Tup, the others did not feel the same way. This was especially true for Vera. As far as she could remember, Colin was only a first-grade knight. Therefore, she certainly did not want Colin to accept Tup's duel invitation. That was simply courting death. "Miss Vera, please don't worry about me." Colin tried to reassure Vera, but Vera did not believe him. In fact, this simple female mage really believed that Colin was willing to die for her. After all, Colin had done the same thing during the battle at the Rapids River. Therefore Vera, who felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart, suddenly made a decision. She decided that this time, she would save her knight. "Father, I am willing to marry Prince Tup. Please stop this meaningless duel." As soon as he heard Vera's words, Colin, who had just picked up the white gloves, was stunned. "Can't you have a little more confidence in me?" Colin screamed in his heart. "Okay." The Duke of St. Hilda finally smiled. Prince Tup was also ecstatic. The half-elf prince's emotions were like a roller coaster ride, going up and down, with great ups and downs. However, in the end Vera still chose him. Therefore, Prince Tup did not even need the Duke of St. Hilda to stop him. Instead, he immediately said to Colin, who was holding the white gloves in a daze, "Viscount Angeli, I'm impressed by your bravery. You've won this duel." A strong sense of humiliation shrouded Colin's entire body. The other party's benevolent attitude completely angered him. He took a big step forward and approached Prince Tup before he asked, "What do you mean by I have won? If I win, then shouldn't you take the initiative to withdraw from your pursuit of Vera?" "Of course not. Miss Vera has already made her choice and I of course respect her choice." "Bullshit." Colin threw the white gloves directly at Prince Tup's face. "If you are a man, then fight with me." Prince Tup was also angry. In the face of Colin, who did not know what was good for him, he also took a step forward and shouted, "Okay, let's duel then, Viscount Angeli." "No." Vera suddenly rushed out and stood between the two men who looked like they were fighting. However, the interesting thing was that she was facing Colin instead of Prince Tup, the fiancé that she had personally chosen. "Colin, don't do this. I am not worthy of your sacrifice." Colin looked deeply into Vera's eyes before he asked in a deep voice, "Don't you believe in me?" If you believe in me, then please move aside." Colin was full of confidence, but in Vera's eyes, he was full of generosity. "No, I will not move aside." Prince Tup, who was standing behind Vera, was furious at this time. No matter how slow he was, he could tell that his fiancée had chosen to marry him because she wanted to protect Colin. They were not even married yet, but she had already been cuckolded. Prince Tup could not stand such humiliation, and he immediately shouted, "Miss Vera, please move aside. Let the men solve their own problems." "Enough." A majestic voice interrupted the love triangle that was in the middle of a melodramatic plot. The Duke of St. Hilda strode over to Colin before he asked, "Viscount Angeli, are you still loyal to me?" In the face of such a question, Colin had no choice but to kneel down on one knee before he replied, "Of course, I am still loyal to you, Duke." "Good. Now, I will appoint you as the envoy to escort Vera to the half-elf kingdom, so that she can marry Prince Tup." Colin's heart trembled, and he fell silent. At this time, he could also see that the Duke was determined to marry Vera to the half-elf kingdom. As for why, obviously, the death of Marquis Adams had frightened the Duke. He could not help but suspect that this was the doing of his younger brother, Marquis Garcia. Marquis Garcia's purpose was to get rid of the heir before Vera, so that Vera could become the future lord of the northern frontier. Therefore, the Duke had to send Vera away at this time. He wanted her to be far away from Winter City, and it would be best if she could marry into a foreign country and give birth to a foreign descendant, so that she would have no right to inherit the title of the Duke. As for Vera's feelings, it was obvious that the Duke did not care about them at all. Perhaps to him, Vera was just a tool for marriage. When he saw that Colin did not speak for a long time, the Duke asked again, "Viscount Angeli, where is your loyalty? Where is your unconditional obedience?" The Duke was pressing him step by step, and Colin had no choice but to suppress his anger. He lowered his head and replied, "Yes, Duke. I will send Miss Vera to the half-elf kingdom safely." At this time, Colin could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. What bullshit, Duke? What bullshit loyalty? All he wanted now was to completely burn down this cold and ruthless place that was full of conspiracies and conspiracies. You want to win over the half-elf kingdom? You want to destroy Vera's right to inherit the title of the Duke? Haha, but I will not let you get what you want. Colin suddenly raised his head and looked at Marquis Garcia, who was sitting on the high platform and watching everything coldly. The two of them looked at each other, and it seemed as if they had finally reached some kind of tacit understanding. Chapter 94. The setting sun scattered its last rays of light, and soon after, the boundless curtain of night enveloped the land. Bonfires were lit in the camp, and the guards were busy boiling water, cooking and feeding the horses. Colin handed a letter and a cage containing a carrier pigeon to the Knight of Rigo. At the same time, he ordered, "Rigo, immediately return to Icestone City, and tell them that I am going to the half-elven kingdom. Let them take full responsibility for the administrative affairs of the territory. I will write a letter every 5 days to explain the latest situation. If they don't receive my letter after 3 days, release this carrier pigeon. Also, let Raymond and Seal continue to be in charge of training the soldiers. When I return from the half-elven kingdom, I hope to see a preliminary army formed. As for you, after you return, lead 1,000 soldiers to the half-elven capital Silvermoon City. Meet me there." Yes, the Knight of Rigo took the cage and turned to leave without asking where the carrier pigeon would fly to after it was released. Actually, this was the carrier pigeon Marquis Garcia gave Colin before he left. It went without saying where it would fly to. Although Marquis Garcia didn't say it explicitly, Colin already understood what he meant. This time, as the messenger, Colin actually didn't need to lead his own troops. After all, this wasn't a war, and the House of St. Hilda had sent 1,000 men to escort him. It would be more than enough to deal with any bandits or wild beasts along the way. However, Colin felt that he had to control a military force that belonged solely to him in case of emergencies. "Sir Viscounts, your dinner is ready. Send it in." A servant carried a metal tray into the tent and placed the food in front of Colin before hurriedly leaving. Although Colin didn't need to eat these normal foods anymore, in order to not attract unnecessary attention, he would still stuff the food into his stomach on time. After finishing the food and drinking some water, Colin walked out of the tent. The composition of the camp was rather complicated. There were guards from the St. Hilda family, the half-elven kingdom's Silvermoon guards, and quite a few trolls. Prince Okamoto's journey back to the Firmament Ice Field overlapped with Colin's journey to the half-elf kingdom. Hence, both parties traveled together for a period of time. The troll prince had been in a very good mood recently, although he did not manage to marry Vera, and was instead sent away by the Duke with a girl from another family. The girl's surname was still St. Hilda. Furthermore, Prince Okamoto's objective for this diplomatic mission had already been achieved. The giant demon empire had successfully obtained a precious moment of respite. As for giving the 3 important military bases of the giant demon empire to the northern frontier, it wasn't a big deal. This was because the northern frontier couldn't possibly place a large number of troops in these 3 important military locations. Otherwise, the thousands of miles of supply lines would drag down the northern frontier. As for the promise that they would never invade the northern frontier, well, even the Duke of St. Hilda didn't believe in this promise. In Okamoto's opinion, as long as the giant demon empire could survive this period of time, there would be hope for them to rise again. "Viscount Angley, come and drink with us," Prince Okamoto shouted when he saw Colin strolling around the camp. Colin looked at Prince Okamoto, who was beaming with happiness. He didn't want to go over, but after hesitating for a moment, he accepted the invitation. He had no choice. Ever since he left Winter City, he had been alone. The guards from the House of St. Hilda were not familiar with him, and Vera had been hiding in the carriage and refusing to see anyone. The atmosphere of the entire group was very depressing, and there was no celebration at all. On the other hand, the half-elves were very happy. Prince Tup was so happy that he almost became a fool. He followed the guards to drink and have fun every day. However, it was obviously impossible for Colin to join them. Now that Prince Okamoto had invited him with great hospitality, Colin went over. It was a good opportunity to drink away his worries and relieve his recent troubles. Come, Your Excellency Viscount Angley, don't be so depressed. There are so many beauties in the world. Why do you have to be so entangled with Miss Vera, this flower? Colin rolled his eyes and ignored Okamoto. He just took the jug of wine that he handed over and poured it into his mouth. Cough, cough. The spicy taste in his mouth made Colin choke for a moment. What wine is this? Prince Okamoto smiled. This is a medicinal wine brewed by the giant demon witch doctor. It is most suitable to drink at night. It will liven things up. Looking at the wretched smile on Okamoto's face, Colin suddenly realized what the other party meant by liven things up. Don't you have any other wine? Colin threw the jug of wine back at Okamoto. Haha, Your Excellency Viscounts, please don't be angry. I have a few dancers here. If you want to vent your anger tonight, I can help you to arrange. Colin was so scared that he turned around and ran away. Giant demon dancer? Forget it. He would rather look for the 5 girls. Hey, Viscount Angley, don't go. Prince Okamoto saw him running away and chased after him again. I apologize to you. I really didn't mean to offend you. Colin waved his hand. It's okay. You don't have to worry about me. Go back and drink your wine. I will walk around by myself. Then I will accompany you for a walk. Colin looked back at Okamoto and said in a puzzled manner, You have already achieved the purpose of your visit. There is no need for you to continue to be courteous to me. I really want to make friends with you, Prince Okamoto said in a serious manner. Colin certainly did not believe such words. However, he did not chase Okamoto away. The two of them strolled to a small stream at the edge of the camp. Looking at the slowly flowing stream, Prince Okamoto suddenly asked, Your Excellency Viscounts, do you know why the Duke wants to marry Vera to Tip? Colin was puzzled. Could it be that Okamoto had also noticed the competition between the Duke of St. Hilda and Marquis Garcia for the successor? Why do you think it is? Colin asked tentatively. It is a political marriage. What else can it be? Of course it is for the sake of benefits, Okamoto said without hesitation. Really? Colin frowned. It is understandable that the Duke did not choose me. After all, I am just a small viscounts. There is no value in marriage. But you, do you think that I am more valuable than Tip? Prince Okamoto suddenly laughed, and it seemed that he was very happy with Colin's praise. Is that not the case? Colin also realized that something was wrong at this time. In his opinion, if the Duke wanted to destroy Vera's right to inherit the throne, it would have been equally effective for her to marry Okamoto or Tip. This was because the northern frontier would not accept a woman who was married to a different race to become the Duke, let alone her son, a half-troll or half-elf, to become the Duke's successor. So why did the Duke choose Prince Tip in the end? In Colin's opinion, Prince Tip's status was not as high as Prince Okamoto's. This was because the Troll Empire was far more powerful than the half-elf kingdom. The Troll Empire had just suffered a crushing defeat and looked like they were on the verge of death. However, as long as they were given 3 to 5 years to recuperate, it would not be difficult for them to pull out an army of 300,000 soldiers again. The half-elf kingdom was a small country with a total population of less than 2 million people. No matter how militaristic they were, it was estimated that pulling out an army of 100,000 soldiers was already the limit. In fact, according to Colin's understanding, this small country was only a subsidiary of the Radiant Empire, and the number of regular soldiers was only about 50,000. Therefore, if the Duke wanted to rope in foreign aid through marriage, why would he favor the half-elf kingdom more than the Troll Empire? Prince Okamoto saw that Colin was confused, so he smiled and said, Actually, the Duke's real motive for marrying Vera to Prince Tup is not the half-elf kingdom. Then what is his real motive? Prince Okamoto stretched out his hand and pointed to the east. It is the east of the empire. Chapter 95. The eastern border of the empire? Colin frowned even more. He couldn't understand why Vera was married to a half-elf prince, but the eastern border of the empire. As a small country sandwiched between the northern frontier and the eastern border of the empire, the half-elf kingdom had always been swaying left and right, trying to please both sides. However, in Colin's view, this small country didn't seem to be the key to the war between the two sides. As if seeing Colin's confusion, Prince Okamoto smiled and asked, "Your Excellency Viscounts, you don't know about naval warfare, right?" Colin was upset when he heard this. However, he also had to admit that his predecessor didn't have any experience of naval warfare. In fact, there was almost no navy in the entire northern frontier. For a long time, the biggest enemy of the northern frontier was the Icefield's Troll Empire. And cavalry was the best troop to deal with the Troll Empire. Therefore, the northern frontier's cavalry had always been the best in the Empire of Light. But if it was a naval army, it would be a bit difficult. At this time, when he heard the Troll Empire say that the Duke was plotting against the eastern border, Colin remembered that the northern frontier and the eastern border were actually separated by a natural moat. The name of this natural moat was the Raging Water River. In fact, the military strength of the Empire of Light wasn't balanced. At least, the northern frontier was obviously stronger than the eastern border. The reason was very simple. The northern frontier had been fighting against the Troll Empire for so many years, while the eastern border's old enemy, the elves, had long disappeared in the Radiant Moon Forest. No one knew whether they were living in seclusion or had been exterminated. But in any case, the eastern border was different from the northern frontier. They didn't have any pressure from foreign races. Only the Yevil Empire at the border of the Radiant Moon Forest might be a bit of an eyesore. But it was just an eyesore. The mages couldn't organize a large army, so they didn't pose much of a threat to the eastern border. As long as the eastern border didn't provoke them and throw out forbidden spells, the two sides could still live in peace and harmony. Therefore, the eastern border hadn't had a large-scale war for hundreds of years. Without the baptism of blood and fire, it was impossible to forge a true army of tigers and wolves. Therefore, the military strength of the eastern region, which had been peaceful for a long time, was basically at the bottom of the Radiance Empire. Fortunately, the northern frontier had to deal with the threat of the trolls. Most of the troops were deployed there, so they naturally wouldn't put too much pressure on the eastern frontier. Even the New Shui River had always been under the control of the eastern region. Now, if the Duke of St. Hilda was really trying to get his hands on the eastern region, as Prince Okamoto had said, then the natural moat of the New Shui River would become the biggest obstacle for the army of the north. That's right, I don't understand naval warfare. Colin nodded and admitted. Then tell me, what does the half-elf kingdom have to do with naval warfare? I remember that the upper reaches of the Raging Water River aren't in the half-elf kingdom. Yes, the Raging Water River is indeed not within the half-elf kingdom. But Your Excellency Viscounts, do you know what the most important element of naval warfare is? Colin touched his chin, searching for all the examples of naval warfare in his memory. After a long while he said in an uncertain tone, "Is it a boat?" "Yes, but an ordinary boat obviously can't bear the task of crossing the river. So to be more precise, what the Duke of St. Hilda needs is a powerful naval force." Colin thoughtfully said, "Could it be that the half-elf kingdom has a powerful navy?" Prince Okamoto smiled with a look of disdain. "The half-elf kingdom does have a navy, but with that navy, I estimate that it will be destroyed by the Eastern Navy in a single move." Colin was even more puzzled. "Then why do you say that the half-elf kingdom is the key to invading the eastern region?" Prince Okamoto picked up a branch on the ground, drew a simple map, and explained, "This is the New Shui River. It's more than 7,000 kilometers long. It seems that the army of the north can cross the river at any point. But in fact it's impossible. The reason is what we just talked about, a boat. The army of the north must build a boat to cross the river. But the eastern army is not stupid. They can't just watch the northern frontier build a boat on the west bank of the New Shui River. At this time, the New Shui River is under the control of the eastern region. So, the northern frontier can't directly build a boat on the New Shui River. So, the Duke of St. Hilda's only choice is to find a river in the northern frontier and build a navy. However, this river wasn't chosen randomly. After all, it's impossible to let the soldiers carry a boat from the land to the New Shui River. So this river must be connected to the New Shui River. At this time, if you carefully look at the map of the northern frontier, you will find that such a river is not impossible to find in the northern frontier, but they are too shallow and narrow to allow a large boat to pass through. But in the upper reaches of the New Shui River, there is such a river that meets the conditions, the Crystal River. And this Crystal River, Prince Okamoto used a branch to draw a circle on the ground, then heavily pointed and said in a deep voice, "It's in the territory of the half-elf kingdom." Hearing this, Colin suddenly understood. This is the same reason that the northern regime in China crossed the river to fight in ancient times. Originally, when Colin read the history books, he had some doubts. The Yangtze River is so long, where can't you cross it? Why does the northern regime always fight to the death at those few points? Just like when the Mongol cavalry went south, why did they have to attack Xiangyang? If you look at the map of China, you will find that Xiangyang is not on the Yangtze River. But there is another river next to it, the Han River. So, as long as you occupy Xiangyang, you will control the Han River. The Mongols can build boats in the Han River, and then go downstream to the Yangtze River. This is the reason why the northern regime can't avoid this place every time they go south. In the lower reaches of the Yangtze River, there is a similar river and lake, the Chaohu Lake. Next to the Chaohu Lake is Hefei. Therefore, when Zhang Liao was guarding Hefei, Sun Quan couldn't sleep and eat well, and he sent troops to attack Hefei several times. In the end, he finally made a name for himself. In short, Colin finally understood the real intention of the Duke of St. Hilda. He married Vera to the half-elf kingdom because he wanted to use this opportunity to control the Crystal River so that he can build a navy and then go downstream to the New Shui River to invade the eastern region. However, why is the Duke of St. Hilda so anxious to plot against the eastern region? This was especially true when the northern region already had a huge hidden threat. Is the Duke so sure that his brother won't betray him? Colin can only temporarily suppress this question in the bottom of his heart. But then he was puzzled again. Why is this guy Okamoto explaining this to me? Is he just trying to show off his knowledge? Although Colin has known this troll prince for a long time, he always felt that the other party should have other intentions this time. Why are you explaining this to me? Colin asked directly. Prince Okamoto smiled. Because I want you to know that the Duke didn't marry Vera to me. Not because I'm not as good as the half-elf boy, but because the half-elf kingdom is the next strategic target of the northern frontier. Colin smiled. Of course, he didn't believe this kind of nonsense. How can a political creature like Okamoto care about such a small thing and explain it to Colin? Before Colin could continue to ridicule him, Prince Okamoto took out a badge and handed it to Colin. If you need any help in Silvermoon City, you can take this to the slave market in the west of the city and look for a merchant named Sith. Maybe he can help you in your trip to the half-elf kingdom more smoothly. Colin took the badge and at the same time, he was convinced in his heart. This troll prince really has other plans. Chapter 96. Colin suddenly smiled as he rubbed the emblem that Prince Okamoto had given him. This was because he had already realized what Okamoto wanted to do. It turns out that you want the northern frontier to smoothly control the half-elf kingdom. It would be best if you could cross the raging river and fight with the eastern frontier. This way, the Duke of St. Hilda would have no time to attack the northern frontier, and the giant demon empire would also gain some time to recuperate. Prince Okamoto smiled. He did not admit to Colin's guess, but he did not deny it either. Since the giant demon empire has already signed a peace agreement with the northern frontier, then we are all friends. If a friend needs help, of course I will help. Is that so? Colin looked at Prince Okamoto with a playful expression and asked, Then I wonder where this Sith friend is from? What is his status in Silvermoon City? What kind of help can he provide me? Prince Okamoto spread out his hands. Don't think too much. This Sith is just a half-elf merchant that I once knew. He should not be able to help you much. I saw that you are not familiar with the half-elf kingdom, so I wanted to introduce a local to you. Colin rolled his eyes. Obviously, he did not believe that Sith was just an ordinary half-elf merchant. But since Okamoto did not want to say, then he did not ask anymore. Perhaps in Okamoto's opinion, Colin must have shouldered the important mission of the Duke to win over the half-elves. But in fact, Colin did not receive any instructions from the Duke at all. Moreover, he did not understand why the Duke had sent him to be the ambassador. However, no matter what the Duke's plan was, Colin's own plan was very clear. That was, he must stop Vera from marrying Prince Tup. Even if he had to turn Silvermoon City upside down. Even if the half-elf kingdom completely leaned towards the eastern frontier. Even if the northern frontier lost the opportunity to cross the raging river, he would not hesitate. As for the Duke of St. Hilda's plan, that had nothing to do with him. Now the Duke of St. Hilda's image in Colin's mind had completely collapsed. A politician who was unscrupulous and full of schemes for benefits would never win Colin's respect, much less his loyalty. After completing his mission, Prince Okamoto's interest in chatting decreased significantly. He chatted with Colin for a while longer before leaving. It was late at night. Everyone in the camp had already gone to bed. Only a few sentries on duty were patrolling the perimeter. Prince Okamoto was still awake. Instead, he was staring at the chessboard in front of him, deep in thought. The chessboard was filled with black and white chess pieces. This was a game called Othello's chess. By flipping each other's chess pieces, the winner would be decided by who had more chess pieces on the board. Hence, it was also called flip chess. It was quite popular among the nobles of the Radiant Empire. At this moment, Prince Okamoto was playing Othello's chess. However, there was no one else in the tent. He was playing chess with himself. Prince Okamoto seemed to have encountered a problem. He rested his chin on one hand and stared at the chessboard in front of him. He did not make a move for a long time. After some time, there was a flash of light in the tent. There was a person in front of Prince Okamoto. He was wearing a loose black robe. It was as if he had been there all along. Pa! The black-robed man reached out and flipped a black chess piece on the bottom left corner of the chessboard, revealing the white chess piece on the reverse side. Prince Okamoto did not mind that the man interrupted his game. He looked at the sudden reversal of the situation on the chessboard and laughed. Good job, Mr. Koei. It's just a small trick. Mr. Koei looked indifferent. Prince Okamoto scattered the chess pieces in his hand on the chessboard, as if he was admitting defeat. Sigh, this Othello's chess is still something you humans can play. I'll pass. Mr. Koei smiled, and did not continue the conversation. Instead, he asked, Did you introduce Sith to Viscount Angley? Yes. Prince Okamoto nodded. Then he looked puzzled. But I didn't get any information from Viscount Angley. It's as if that kid really knows nothing about the Duke of St. Hilda's plan. That's normal. Viscount Angley is valued by both Marquis Garcia and the Duke of St. Hilda. Naturally, there's something special about him. It's impossible for you to find out about him so easily. If we don't know about the Duke of St. Hilda's plan, how should we deal with it? And Sith, don't you think it's a little inappropriate for us to expose him so quickly? Mr. Koei looked at Prince Okamoto, who looked hesitant. He stretched out his hand and tapped twice on the chessboard. Then he said, Your Highness, it's just like Othello's chess. If you don't know your opponent's intention and don't dare to place a chess piece, then you will definitely lose. That makes sense. Prince Okamoto nodded. However, the doubt on his face did not completely disappear. He cleaned up the mess on the chessboard and invited Mr. Koei. Mr. Koei, would you like to play another game with me? Mr. Koei nodded slightly. It's my pleasure. The tent became quiet again. Only the soft sound of the chess pieces falling on the chessboard could be heard. After a long time, Prince Okamoto stared at the chessboard and hesitated again. It seemed like he had encountered another difficult problem. Mr. Koei, why do you think the Duke of St. Hilda sent Viscount Angley as his ambassador? I think that this Viscount seems to be unhappy with Vera. Isn't the Duke worried that he will ruin his plan? Mr. Koei lowered his head and looked at the chessboard before he asked. Your Highness, how do you know that Viscount Angley is not deliberately set up by the Duke of St. Hilda? Set up by the Duke? Prince Okamoto was deep in thought. Could it be that someone else is actually carrying out the Duke's plan? Mr. Koei nodded and then shook his head. When Prince Okamoto saw this, he was even more puzzled. Just as he was about to ask more questions, Mr. Koei suddenly said, Your Highness, Do you know what the best strategy is when you don't know your opponent's intention? What is it? It's not a strategy. Not a strategy. Yes. Mr. Koei raised his head and looked directly into Prince Okamoto's eyes. It's a strategy where you play your game and I play mine. You don't have to guess what your opponent is trying to do. Instead, you just focus on perfecting your plan until the two sides are in close combat. Then we will play each other's moves. Prince Okamoto rubbed the chess piece in his hand, and he seemed to have finally understood something. After a while, he smiled and placed the chess piece on the chessboard before he praised. Mr. Koei, you are really a master of chess. I think that with you around, the Half-Elf Kingdom's chess game will definitely be very exciting. Mr. Koei smiled bitterly and said, Your Highness, the world is like a game of chess, but people are not chess pieces. They have their own thoughts, desires, and ambitions. They will not be manipulated like chess pieces. My previous plan in the northern frontier was ruined because of this. And it actually helped the Duke of St. Hilda a lot. Prince Okamoto quickly comforted him. Mr. Koei, you don't have to blame yourself. Other than the gods, who else can really calculate everything? Mr. Koei smiled and said, Your Highness, you can rest assured that this small setback will not discourage me. Moreover, as I said, people are not chess pieces, and they will not be manipulated. I'm afraid that the Half-Elf Kingdom's chess game will exceed everyone's expectations. Prince Okamoto raised his head and looked at Mr. Koei thoughtfully. It was as if he thought of a certain unwilling viscounts. Then he smiled in agreement. Chapter 97. Autumn was the most beautiful season of the year in the Red Maple Forest. The Maple Forest, which was only a few dozen kilometers away from the Half-Elf Kingdom, Silvermoon City, had already turned into a sea of red at this time. At a glance, there were clusters of burning flames all over the mountains, as if they were going to burn the entire world. In the Maple Forest, a team composed of half-elves and humans was slowly moving forward. This was naturally the main character's entourage. They had already entered the territory of the Half-Elf Kingdom, and would probably arrive at Silvermoon City tomorrow. Prince Okamoto's entourage had already parted ways with them. Before parting ways, Prince Okamoto warmly invited Colin to visit the Troll King's city when he was free. Colin naturally agreed with a chuckle. However, in fact, he was thinking in his heart, he was definitely not going to visit the Troll King's city as a guest. He was more like a conqueror. The scenery along the way was getting more and more beautiful, but Vera's mood was getting worse and worse. The female mage had been cooped up in the carriage and refused to see anyone. Colin tried to ask to see her a few times, but he was always rejected. Even Vera's fiancé, Prince Tup, was treated the same way. At this time, he was standing in front of Vera's carriage and bowing to greet her. Miss Vera, it's getting late. I don't think we will be able to reach Silvermoon City today. The Red Maple Manor is right in front of us. It is one of the properties of the House of Medea. Why don't you rest there for the night? There was no movement in the carriage, and even the curtains were not opened. After a long time, he finally replied, Okay. It was a simple and concise reply. A trace of embarrassment and resentment flashed across Prince Tup's face, but he quickly hid it away. The half-elf prince, who liked to maintain his demeanor and elegance, bowed to Vera's carriage before he turned around and left. The entourage continued to move forward, and finally arrived at the Red Maple Manor before sunset. As one of the oldest manors in the Half-Elf Kingdom, the Red Maple Manor had a history of more than 800 years. The entire manor was located in the middle of the Red Maple Forest, covering an area of about 700 acres. The surrounding walls were made of solid limestone with vines crawling all over them. The buildings in the manor were solemn and exquisite, combining the characteristics of the buildings of the human and elf races. It was just that with the passage of time, it inevitably looked a little old. Of course, in the eyes of the nobles who valued history and inheritance, this was not a flaw. Apparently, the Red Maple Manor had already received the news that the envoy was about to arrive. At this time, they were welcoming Vera and her entourage with the grandest ceremony. Colin followed the team into the manor, looking around curiously. It had to be said that the half-elves had indeed inherited the elves' relentless pursuit of beautiful things. The entire manor was decorated exquisitely and elegantly. Even Vera, who had been hiding in the carriage for so many days, could not help but secretly lift the corner of the curtain to look outside. Colin stared at the lush green grass on the ground. He was very curious as to how the gnomes were able to keep the grass green in the late autumn season. Miss Vera, Prince Tup and Viscount Angley, dinner is ready. Please follow me. Under the guidance of the butler, everyone arrived at the dining room. The atmosphere during dinner was very depressing, because Vera was in a low mood. Even though Prince Tup tried his best to liven up the atmosphere, it was still useless. After the awkward dinner, everyone returned to their rooms to rest. Colin wandered around the manor a few times in the name of visiting the manor. Halfway through, he caught a long-tailed kite and treated it as his dinner. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Colin finally returned to his room. As soon as he finished washing up and was about to go to bed, he heard someone knocking on his door. Knights of Telda? It's already so late. What's the matter? Colin opened the door and looked at the white-haired knight with a puzzled expression on his face. Turd Morgus was a family knight who was loyal to the Duke of St. Hilda. He was also the captain of the escort team. The Knights of Telda nodded slightly at Colin and said, "Viscounts, Miss Vera would like to see you." Colin blinked and nodded immediately. "Okay, lead the way." It was already late at night, and the manor was very quiet. There was no one in sight. The more Colin walked, the more puzzled he became. This was because he did not even see a single guard on duty. However, he quickly realized that the guards who were originally on duty here belonged to the House of St. Hilda. He guessed that the Knights of Telda had already transferred them away in advance. So what was Vera trying to do? Why was she being so mysterious? The both of them walked silently to the door of Vera's room. The Knights of Telda made a gesture to Colin before they quickly left. After the other party disappeared into the darkness, Colin knocked on the door with a puzzled expression on his face. "Miss Vera, it's me. Come in." Colin pushed the door open and entered the room. There were white curtains hanging all over the room, and there was a white bearskin on the floor. There was a beautiful girl standing on top of the bearskin. Gulp. Colin swallowed his saliva. This was because Vera was too attractive tonight. She was only wearing a white silk nightgown, and her exquisite curves were faintly discernible. Her golden hair was draped over her white shoulders, and there was a trace of water vapor emitting from it. It was obvious that she had just finished bathing. A pair of ivory white feet stepped on the bearskin floor mat, glowing with a watery luster, filled with a strange charm. "Vera, Vera, why are you looking for me?" In this situation, Colin couldn't even speak fluently. The girl's bright face was slightly flushed, but there was a firm light in her eyes. She slowly approached Colin and asked at the same time, "Colin, am I beautiful?" "Yes, of course you are beautiful." Colin looked at the girl's slender and beautiful legs that were exposed as she walked, and the blood in his body showed signs of going out of control. At this time, if it wasn't for the fact that he still didn't understand why Vera was looking for him, he would be too much of a straight man. Vera had already placed her trembling hands on Colin's chest, and then raised her head. Her pink lips exuded a deadly temptation under the light of the magic lamp. Colin took a deep breath, and did not hesitate any longer. He hugged the girl in his arms and said solemnly, "Don't worry, I will not let you marry that half-elf." Vera's body trembled slightly, but she immediately shook her head. "No, Colin, I will marry Prince Tup. This is my duty as a St. Hilda. However, I just want to give you everything that is good about me before I enter that cage. No, you can only marry me." Colin sounded as if he had been possessed by a domineering CEO at this time. "Colin," Vera wanted to persuade him again, but the domineering man blocked her mouth. The girl's heart suddenly beat faster, and her mind went blank. Boom! There was a flash of lightning outside the house, and it started to rain. The bean-sized raindrops hit the closed windows and made a pitter-patter sound. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.